Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 451, Charlotte Mecklen. Charlotte boarded the tallest ship of Dalmabathus and looked out over the Black Phoenix City. Suddenly, he said, I will rename this city the City of Destiny and build one. No, I'll build 9 of the largest temples. Charlotte originally wanted to build the largest temple for the Serpent of Destiny, but then he remembered the ancient Chinese wisdom and immediately corrected his mistakes. He planned to build 9 temples and even had a plan in mind. The main purpose of Charlotte's doing this, in addition to hoping to please the gods, was to erase the traces of the Black Phoenix. He even planned to promote the Farsi language in the renamed City of Destiny. Of course, he would not take tough measures, but planned to adopt Farsi language education in universities and promote free Farsi language literacy classes at the bottom. He would even promote a beast god transformation technique in such literacy classes for the bottom, just as he did in the Red Dragon Sea. A land with Farsi as the main language and Ingrama as the secondary language, popularizing the beast god transformation technique, eliminating the characteristics of residents from different sources, and forming a new cultural heritage. The Earldom of Mecklen is the main naturalization of Charlotte's future. Charlotte believes that she can do this well. Charlotte is enjoying the future after the war, and her arms are slightly warm. He took out the diary and turned to Agmaris's labyrinth. It was originally only the title page, but at this time there was an extra page, and a thought came into his mind. Charlotte Mecklen played Agmaris 15 times, summoned him, and shattered his breath, and made enemies with Agmaris, the evil god of the labyrinth of the Aglar's Sea. She has completed the drawing of 99 labyrinths and mastered them skillfully, and obtained the real Agmaris labyrinth map. Please go to the Aglar's Sea immediately to challenge Agmaris. If you can't reach the Aglar's Sea within 28 days, 3 hours, and 19 minutes and 17 seconds, you will be forced into the evil god arena. Charlotte was slightly surprised and flipped through the new page. The real Agmaris labyrinth was not a flat plane, but a 3-dimensional labyrinth with 99 layers, and there were countless time and space corridors, making this 99-layer labyrinth complicated and confusing. Even with a map in hand, Charlotte still felt dizzy. This was because he had mastered part of the power of the labyrinth evil god. If ordinary people saw this map, even their souls would be sucked in. Charlotte muttered in a low voice, only 28 days left. When he crossed over, he brought the buff of the evil god's arrival, and until now, he has not been able to remove it. Although Charlotte tried hard, it only made the evil god's power in his hands stronger and stronger, and he did not get rid of the crisis. As the bloody glory progressed, the time for Karnstein's arrival was getting farther and farther. But the time of the coming of the labyrinth evil god, Agmaris, has always been swinging back and forth. Charlotte has now completed all the requirements of Agmaris labyrinth, but there is no chance to delay. Just as she was about to take back the diary, Charlotte suddenly had an idea and opened the Saint Light God's logbook and saw Amun's message. However, it was unknown how long it had been since this message was left. It was a bit lonely and pitiful. Charlotte was very wary of the title of father. She raised her eyebrows and thought to herself, Amun is my son, and Omi Bella is my wife. I don't have such a weird family. What kind of mistake has caused Amun to have such an illusion? Charlotte decided to take some time to release the Holy Light God's logbook and ask carefully what was going on. But forget it now. It was already the limit for him to come to Dalmabathus to relax. He still had to host the 4-Nation conference later. He immediately announced that Flame Paladin Vigo would be the captain of the Dalmabathus, which made the only saint in South Seraph extremely grateful. Although he had a high status in South Seraph, he had never imagined that he could own a legendary warship. Charlotte did not hand over all the fleets in his hands to Vigo at the same time, but handed over the fleet in his hands to Black Dragon. The saints under Charlotte were not professionally trained naval officers, and were not suitable to be the captain of a magic alchemy warship. Sailing is an industry that requires professional knowledge and experience. He planned to recruit captains from the Fars Navy and expand his power. Charlotte held a simple banquet in the banquet hall of Dalmabathus, and only invited the saints and main officers under his command. After the banquet, he returned to Black Phoenix City. Although Black Phoenix City was calm on the surface, in fact, the envoys and representatives of the 4 countries, as well as the nobles and even the royal families of each country, had countless correspondences. They argued endlessly for various interests. There were quarrels every day. Even some representatives with extremely strong martial arts values would directly fight when the quarrel reached a fever pitch. Even Antonio participated in 2 duels, one with Count Constantine and the other with Count Landmark. Fortunately, this kind of duel was still controlled within the scope of learning. The 2 sides fought fiercely for half a day and ended peacefully. Charlotte basically watched coldly and did not dare to make any personal sword. He could also see that these duels were the countries testing each other's strength. Although Antonio was also at the 24th level and had the Dark Knight's Spear of the Holy level in his hand, he was still recognized as the weakest among the peak Holy levels. There are high and low levels in the Holy level, and there are high and low levels in the 24th level. If the 2 earls probing revealed Antonio's background, they would be sure that he was not strong enough to compete with an old peak, and they would certainly push their luck at the negotiation table. However, Antonio had been through many battles, especially not long ago, when he had a fierce battle with Georgia di Hadrian. Although he joined forces with Kratos, he had accumulated rich experience, which made the 2 old peak saints look at him with new eyes. At the Four-Nation Conference, Farza actually had a considerable advantage. The main reason was that the Four-Nation coalition was defeated by Georgia di Hadrian, but Charlotte attacked the Black Phoenix city and captured 11 of the 12 core direct counties of the Black Phoenix dynasty in one fell swoop, and also repelled Georgia di Hadrian head-on. This made Charlotte's reputation very strange. Everyone knew that he was not yet a saint, but the nobles of various countries acquiesced that he was a famous general in the old continent. And he was also a top-ranked character. In addition, Antonio's rise and breakthrough of the 24th level also gave Fars an additional heavy chip. Although Baron persuaded Count Constantine to surrender, he was an outsider after all, and Baron was not at ease. Moreover, he had just been defeated by Georgia di Hadrian recently. This duel was a great blow to the reputation of the former Black Phoenix's strongest man. Count Landmark proposed to divide the 12 direct jurisdictions fairly, which was not justified at all. The other 2 empires also had their own plans, and their support for Count Landmark was very ambiguous. Count D'Artagnan, who had not contributed anything when the Emperor of Brittany ascended the throne, showed mature diplomatic skills in this meeting, and achieved remarkable results by combining forces. Just when the negotiations were deadlocked, Count Landmark realized his shortcomings and finally stopped insisting. He sent a letter and invited Ingrima's foreign minister. Another Count Sume rushed to Black Phoenix City, leaving the main force of the meeting to professionals. After the foreign minister of Ingrima, Earl Sume, arrived, Byron also called the ministers from the country. However, the Lionheart dynasty remained unmoved and still took the lead with Crown Prince Brunhild. The arrival of the 2 foreign ministers in Black Phoenix City accelerated the progress of the negotiations. In fact, the 4 empires united to divide the Black Phoenix, mainly because the war lasted for so long, and the economies of Fars and Byron could not support it. Ingrima was slightly better, so the attitude at the negotiation table was a little higher. The Lionheart dynasty had not participated in the war before. Although it participated in the Four-Nation coalition later, the resources invested were not much. Even when facing the raid of Georgia di Hadrian, the army of the Lionheart dynasty deliberately avoided it. It suffered the least loss among the 4 countries, so Crown Prince Brunhild had the most moderate attitude. After more than 10 days of intense arguments between representatives of all parties, there was finally a breakthrough. Fars took away 9 of the 12 core direct administered counties of Black Phoenix, and the other 3 were divided among the other 3 empires. The rest of the Black Phoenix territory is based on the actual occupied area, but it supports the exchange of land between countries to avoid the emergence of enclaves. Fars made concessions on the rest of the territory. The Emperor of Brittany even invited Crown Prince Brunhild to visit Strasbourg and reached a secret agreement with the Lionheart dynasty. Soon Ingrima also announced that he agreed with a new plan, but hoped that Fars could compensate for the military expenses. The Emperor of Brittany inquired about this request. Bayron actually did not suffer a loss. Archduchess Misu occupied the north, which was almost more than half of the area of the Black Phoenix dynasty. It was just that Archduchess Misu was nominally a baron, but her independence was too strong. But when the 3 countries were going to stop quarreling, Bayron could only try his best to get a benefit and agree to the latest plan. Soon, representatives of the 4 empires, 3 foreign ministers and Emperor Brunhild of the Lionheart dynasty, signed a series of important documents such as the Four-Nation Covenant and the Four-Nation Territory Boundary Agreement on the Dalmabatas, completely dividing the Black Phoenix dynasty. Although the Four-Nation Coalition had not yet completely occupied the entire territory of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and there were still resistance forces in many places, it was no longer important to the four countries. Dividing the Black Phoenix dynasty and swallowing up this former empire would allow Fars, Byron, and Ingrima, who participated in the war, to take a breath of fresh air, and would also allow the Lionheart dynasty to flourish and its national strength to grow. After the Four-Nation alliance was reached, the Emperor of Brittany announced on the Dalmabase that Charlotte would be promoted to Duke Charlotte Mechlin, and according to the agreement, the Black Phoenix territory occupied by Charlotte and the former South Seraph were assigned to the Dukedom of Mechlin. From then on, Charlotte Mechlin officially had a VIP seat on the stage of history. Chapter 452, I can become an evil god at any time if I want to. The series of agreements signed by the four empires in Black Phoenix City only completed the general framework. Next, there are countless trivial matters to discuss, but this is no longer a very important task. First, the Emperor of Brittany announced the withdrawal of troops and rewarded the Black Phoenix land he had swallowed to the meritorious ministers, leaving only the foreign minister Count Yartanen to do the final finishing work. The Crown Prince of the Lionheart dynasty, Brunhild, invited Charlotte to visit Assa Castle in the future, leaving Conroe to go with the Emperor of Brittany to Strasbourg for a state visit. Ingrimer is an island country. Although it wants to obtain the land of the Old World, the location of the land obtained this time is not very ideal, so it made an exchange with the other three empires, retaining only a few cities near the sea, and the rest of the land was exchanged for supplies, warships, overseas territories, etc. The foreign minister Count Sume was also left in Black Phoenix City. Baron is the empire that benefited the war second only to Fars. Duchess Misu occupied Thessa, which was equivalent to controlling the north. Byron also obtained several other large pieces of land, which bordered Byron and were very convenient to rule. However, the person Byron left behind to finish the work was Juno Arthur, Charlotte's teacher. Charlotte was very happy to hear the news, and directly gave the Dalmabatas to Juno Arthur, so that her teacher could enjoy the highest reception standards. The four countries had already signed the main treaty, and Charlotte didn't care about these diplomats. Anyway, diplomats were relatively polite and would not fight because of quarrels, and the remaining interests were not enough to cause too much dispute. He focused his energy on unifying the Duchy of Mechlin and preparing to go to sea. Charlotte divided his duchy into 13 regions, and the original 9 directly subordinate counties of the Black Phoenix were changed to regions. Although counties and regions were almost the same thing in terms of administration, changing to regions could erase the traces of the Black Phoenix. The rest were the noble territories under his command. Charlotte did not expect that he had a good reputation in Black Phoenix. Nearly 100 nobles expressed their intention to join him after the Four Nations Conference. Charlotte accepted all the requests and maintained a conciliatory attitude towards the nobles, making almost no changes. After making a rough plan, he left the old lizardman Black Dragon behind and prepared to embark on a new journey. A few days before departure, Charlotte tossed and turned every day, feeling uneasy. Although he had made countless preparations, he was still very worried. After all, he was going to face the evil god. In the end, he decided to consult a teacher. After all, the ancestors of vampires were also evil gods, and they should not mind such things. When Charlotte found Juno Arthur, the strongest man regarded by Ron, smiled and said, "Are you planning to go to the Sea of Agulhas?" Charlotte was shocked and asked, "How did the teacher know?" Juno Arthur said lightly, "The blood energy in your body is about to overflow. To reach this level in such a short time, you must have completed 99 mazes. There is no other possibility." Charlotte couldn't help but flatter him. "Teacher is really discerning." Juno Arthur smiled and said, "The labyrinth evil god Agnerus is also a very famous evil god on the New World. His labyrinth evil magic is spread everywhere, and you have never concealed the fact that you can maze the city. It's not surprising that you can see through this." Ever since Charlotte learned from Grand Duchess Misu that her future father-in-law had investigated her background, she didn't hold much hope that she still had some secrets. He really didn't hide the fact that he could turn the city into a maze, and most people knew about it and didn't express surprise, because it was common in the New World. Charlotte suppressed her uneasiness and asked, "Teacher, do you have any advice for me?" Juno Arthur smiled and said, "I haven't killed the evil god myself. I'll accompany you to the Agar Sea. Charlotte was shocked and said, "Master, is it convenient for you to leave Black Phoenix City?" Juno Arthur smiled and said, "What's the inconvenience? The rest here are just trivial matters. Besides, in this war, Baron has obtained Constantine and Misu, and is already the biggest winner. Let them fight for the remaining petty gains." Charlotte took a deep breath. He understood what Juno meant. The war in this world is always a war between the strong. In this battlefield, no matter how many people, materials, and warships Baron lost, as long as he could maintain the number of saints and there were peak saints in charge, he would not be considered a loser. Seeing that Juno was not worried at all and was a little curious about meeting the evil god, Charlotte asked, "Teacher, aren't you afraid of the evil god?" Juno said lightly, "As long as I want, I can become an evil god at any time. It's just that I haven't found a safe way yet. Besides, if you go to the Agar Sea, you will only challenge an incarnation of the labyrinth evil god Agmirus, and you will not encounter his real body. The holy rank is the upper limit allowed by this world. Well, anyway, this world is a bit weird. There is a very vague but cold line between the holy rank and the god rank. To this day, no one understands why the 9 righteous gods have crossed over and still retain their reason and even emotions, just like ordinary people, but a large number of evil gods have become chaotic, corrupt, and degenerate. Not only have they lost their emotions and reason, they can't even retain their normal bodies. The 3 emperors and 6 kings of the Blood Clan are already outliers among the evil gods, but there are still many weird things. It was the first time for Charlotte to discuss the issue of evil gods with someone who was an experienced and old-fashioned saint-level peak. Every word of Juno was earth-shattering, which gave him countless imaginations. However, being able to travel with Juno Arthur, Charlotte immediately had great confidence in going to the Sea of Agars. Juno smiled and said, "Take all your most powerful men with you, you will need them. Also prepare more food, water, weapons, medicine, and even supplies. I heard that someone went on an expedition to the Sea of Agars and it took 5 or 6 years, maybe it took longer, but those people haven't come back yet. No one knows whether they will appear after being missing for decades or hundreds of years." Charlotte talked with Juno for a long time, and finally felt a little confident. He kept Black Dragon and Regulus. Black Dragon was very intelligent, Regulus was old enough, and both of them were stable. If they worked together, there wouldn't be too many conflicts. An orc and a human could balance various interests. After 2 days of preparation, Charlotte organized a fleet and quietly left the Black Phoenix City. Chapter 453 Charlotte's Dalma Base. Although this world has extraordinary power, and the Saint Order even has the power to split mountains and seas, it has not yet been fully explored by humans. At present, human footprints have only reached the old and new continents and 7 oceans. Among them, the Argel Sea is an ocean between the old and new continents. Just cross the Sea of Giant Whales, and you will encounter a sea area that stretches for thousands of kilometers and has at least tens of thousands of islands of various sizes. These islands are called the Argel's Islands, and the ocean where the islands are located is called the Argel Sea. However, the Argel Sea is closer to the New World. It takes about 3 months to sail from the Old World to the New World. From the Old World, it will take about 1.5 months to reach the Argel Sea. It only takes more than 20 days to sail through the Argel Sea to reach the New World. Well, crossing the Argel Sea is very dangerous and takes at least half a month. Originally, Charlotte only had 28 days left, and he was delayed in the Black Phoenix City for more than 10 days. According to the normal voyage, it would definitely not be enough to reach the Agar Sea. However, Charlotte's fleet was different. He had a legendary warship as the flagship and a fleet of 7 magic alchemy warships, without any ordinary ships. The speed of the magic alchemy warship was more than 3 times that of an ordinary sailing ship. Although time was a bit tight, Charlotte had enough time in his calculations. After all, he was a math teacher, so there was no problem with calculations. Charlotte left 2 saints behind, and did not bring the Black Phoenix nobles who had defected, so there were only 9 saints in the fleet. Holy Mountain of Light Cresto, former First Deputy Commander of the Far's Royal Knights Aspris, Golden Goat Haralf, Silverback Chiudro, Elephant Agon, Good Son Gareth Mecrin, former Black Phoenix's youngest Saint Antonio Constantine and Flame Paladin Vigo. Plus his teacher Juno Arthur. This camp can really kill gods. Charlotte handed over the 7 magic alchemy warships under his command to Cresto, Aspris, Rolf, Chodero, Agon, Gareth Mecrin, and Antonio Constantine. He stayed on the Dalma base with his teachers Juno and Vigo. This time, he also specially recruited a group of experienced sailors, most of whom were from the Black Phoenix Navy, and also brought a large number of Maze guards, including the Old Goat's men. Although Charlotte himself had no sailing experience, he was not short of sailing veterans. This unprecedented fleet went deep into the Sea of Giant Whales not long after leaving Black Phoenix City. Along the way, Charlotte saw many huge whales passing by the fleet, and some of them even curiously followed for a while. Princess May and Sebastiani both had their own giant whale pets. Charlotte was also very interested in this kind of pet, but he was rarely on the sea, and he couldn't afford to keep it, so he was only slightly interested, but not impulsive. Charlotte originally wanted to repair the Holy Light Kingdom and then sail on it, but this legendary warship still owes the last 3 items, the fangs of the sea serpent Vasuji, the tears of the giant whale king, and the branches of the ancient Medora tree. Charlotte did get the coordinates, but he never understood why the coordinates of the 3 items were in the same place. According to the common sense of Earthlings, creatures at the top of the food chain, such as the sea serpent and the giant whale king, are generally not in the same place, otherwise the 2 sides will definitely fight. The day before Charlotte set off, he told all his men that he was going to conquer the labyrinth evil god Agmaris. Just as he expected, almost no men backed down. However, this time, Charlotte did not bring Dubin and other old subordinates. There are 3 reasons: they are just ordinary extraordinary people, and they have no sailing experience. They are not very useful in the battle of the expedition to the Agulhas Sea. Charlotte thinks that these old subordinates should enjoy their life, and there is no need to take risks with him. His Duchy of Mechlin is in great need of reliable people to manage, and for him, there is no one more reliable than these old subordinates. Charlotte stood on the highest ship of the Dalmabas, looking out at the sea. In the first few days of sailing, he still felt very fresh, as if he was traveling on a luxury cruise ship. On Earth, he was just an ordinary math teacher, and his salary was not enough to support the enjoyment of taking a luxury cruise ship. Now there's the Dalmabas, which is much more luxurious than a luxury cruise ship, and he is the owner of this fleet, which makes him feel very high-spirited. But after sailing for several days, he could only see the endless sea every day, which made life a bit boring. He wanted to see something different from the waves of the sea, such as passing ships, but unfortunately, after leaving the Black Phoenix City, he never saw any human ships again. Charlotte was about to go back to practice for a while. When Georgiadi Hadrian raided the Black Phoenix City, he broke through to the 18th level, and even through all the Agmaris labyrinths and ancient paintings that recorded the true appearance of this evil god, into the bloody vortex of the Vango clan, raising the infinite mirror world Trek 6, but still a line short of being promoted to the holy level. After Charlotte went to sea, he had been working hard, hoping to break through the holy level before entering the Agmaris Sea, but the bottleneck of the holy level has not been loosened so far. Charlotte asked Juno, but Juno smiled and said nothing, only telling him that he needed to be more patient. The cabin where Charlotte lived was where the Black Phoenix emperors of all generations lived. There was no other country in the old world that would reserve a cabin for the emperor on a legendary warship, because the legendary warships of other countries were for war, and only the legendary warships of the Black Phoenix were for the emperor's enjoyment. This room, which was more than 1,000 square meters, had 2 bedrooms, one for the emperor and the other for the queen, as well as a study, a living room, a piano room, 2 dining rooms, and 2 viewing platforms. Charlotte had wanted to give this bedroom to Juno. After all, the strongest man in Baron was his teacher, but Juno declined politely and told him, "Your status will be different in the future, and you need your own majesty." Charlotte returned to the bedroom and looked at the scenery outside the porthole. He felt a little bored, so he reached out and wiped it, and the porthole suddenly dimmed. A few days after he went to sea, he turned all the portholes and mirrors on the Dalmabas into a mirror world. The Dalmabas also added a function: all the portholes can be dimmed, which makes living more comfortable. Charlotte was lying on the palace sofa where the Black Phoenix emperors of all generations had sat, preparing to practice hard for a while, when he heard the copper bell in the room ring. He knew that Vigo would not disturb him unless there was an emergency, so he had to rush to the captain's room. When he arrived at the captain's room, he saw a huge fleet in the distance. The number of ships in the fleet was more than 10 times that of theirs, and every ship had the noble emblem of the Black Phoenix. Chapter 454, Extraordinary Out of Control. Vigo said solemnly, "It's the Black Phoenix fleet." Charlotte nodded and said, "Georgiadi Hadrian should be in front, After attacking the Black Phoenix City and being repelled by Antonio, George and Hadrian chose to set sail. Countless Black Phoenix nobles chose to follow, and even created a spectacle of thousands of sails entering the sea. The fleet in front was so large, and all of them were insignia of Black Phoenix nobles. There was no other possibility except George and Hadrian's fleet. This fleet had only nearly 100 ships, and it was obviously not the main force of George and Hadrian, so it could only fall behind the fleet behind. Charlotte was not interested in defeating this fleet. He still had to go to the Ager Sea, and had no time to delay on the way. Charlotte said, "Our ship is fast, bypass this fleet and continue to sail to the set target." Vigo agreed, and hurriedly used the magic alchemy communication device to send a message to the other 7 magic alchemy warships, and then accelerated. When their fleet passed by the Black Phoenix fleet from a distance, Charlotte could even see countless Black Phoenix nobles boarding the deck with desperate faces. He couldn't help but say, "Vigo, go over and tell them that those who return to the Black Phoenix will be forgiven for their past mistakes and can still keep their titles and territories and maintain their old wealth." Although Charlotte was not interested in naval battles, she was very happy to give George and Hadrian some eye drops. Vigo really flew into the air, but in a moment, he was surrounded by 3 saints in the sky and beaten up fiercely. Charlotte had to ask Juno to help rescue Vigo. The only saint of South Seraph came back with a bruised face and said angrily, "They don't have the moral principles of war. 3 of them attacked me. If it weren't for Mr. Juno's help, I would have perished in the sea of giant whales." Vigo was actually sighing. When he was in the South Seraph Restoration Army, he was like a stabilizing force. He would only take action occasionally in very difficult wars. But since he joined Charlotte, he became a Zaku and no longer had the opportunity to take action at a decisive moment. Even in daily wars, he was not a very important role. Charlotte comforted this loyal subordinate and said, "I had good intentions, but I didn't expect these Black Phoenix remnants to be so ungrateful. When I return from the Sea of Ogles, I will catch them all in one fell swoop." Charlotte's fleet was 3 times faster than the ordinary Black Phoenix fleet, and soon left this fleet behind. On the 3rd day, Charlotte encountered another fleet of the Black Phoenix. This fleet was much larger, and even had quite a few saints, with 7 saints vacating the air. But after Kratos floated into the air, the 7 Black Phoenix saints never dared to approach again. Kratos was a saint of the 23rd Order, and even if there were more than 10 people besieging ordinary saints of the 19th and 20th Orders, it would be difficult to win, and they might even be killed one by one. Charlotte was now certain that George and Hadrian also wanted to go to the New World. Although the New World was now in chaos due to the evil gods, there was no better choice for these people who had lost their country than the New World. In the subsequent voyage, Charlotte let the fleet deviate slightly from the route. He not only wanted to avoid unnecessary battles, but also to go to the mysterious coordinates to find the last 3 treasures to repair the Holy Light Kingdom. Charlotte was originally quite worried, but since they were almost at the mysterious coordinates, he felt that it was no longer necessary to continue hiding it, so he found his teacher Juno again. He had been looking for Juno for advice recently, and Juno was not surprised by his arrival. Seeing Charlotte's expression of stepping on dog shit, Juno Arthur couldn't help but laugh and said, "Is there anything you didn't say before that you want to tell me now?" Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief and said, "There is really one thing that I didn't dare to tell my teacher before." Juno waved his hand, and a beautiful blood servant brought coffee to the 2 of them. Juno instructed Charlotte in the dreamland last time, but this time he went out to sea with his own team. There were more than 10 blood servants alone, including combat types and night types. Well, maybe they're dual-purpose day and night types. Charlotte didn't dare to delve into the details of her teacher's blood servants. Charlotte took a sip of coffee and said, "I once got a legendary battleship," Juno said lightly, "Queen Bee." "I know." Charlotte took a deep breath and said, "Not the Queen Bee." Juno took a sip of coffee and almost spit it out, and asked, "You have another legendary battleship?" Charlotte nodded and said, "I also have a Holy Light Kingdom." Juno was very surprised and said, "Didn't this legendary battleship disappear a long time ago?" "It is the first large version of the legendary battleship. It is said that." Juno suddenly realized and said, "Is it really made from the body of Lord Amabella?" Charlotte nodded and said, "Yes." Juno said, "I want to see it." Charlotte replied, "Okay." Juno raised a finger and said, "No need to go through so much trouble." Under the look of the strongest vampire, Charlotte fell asleep, but the dreamland where he appeared was no longer land, but a vast ocean. Juno floated in the air and said, "Let the Holy Light Kingdom out." Charlotte stepped on the vast ocean and threw out the golden ring. The golden ring fell, and the huge hull of the Holy Light Kingdom floated out of the water. Juno Arthur landed and reached out to press the top of Amabella's head. The divine creature opened his eyes and saw Juno. His face was distorted and he howled loudly, but it was blocked by an invisible protective shield and did not affect Charlotte. Juno looked at the divine creature with a complicated expression, but did not withdraw his palm. After 7 or 8 hours, Juno Arthur withdrew his palm. Amabella, the divine creature, seemed very tired, as if a lot of things had been taken away. Charlotte was very curious and asked, "Teacher, what's going on?" Juno said to Charlotte, "Have you heard of the extraordinary out of control?" Charlotte said, "I have heard of it." He has more than just heard of it. In order to enter the supernatural realm, Charlotte Mecklen summoned the evil god, which was completely destroyed. This is the standard supernatural loss of control. Juno said calmly, "Human supernatural loss of control is not serious, and the probability of failure is only 30%. Many human practice secret scrolls have ways to circumvent it. At most, they are stuck at a bottleneck and cannot break through. The Blood Clan has many supernatural losses of control. But this is not as good as entering the god level from the saint level. So far, there have been only 9 completely successful examples, that is the 9 righteous gods." Chapter 455, Their responses have become regular. You know, all the evil gods whose names you have heard of have lost control. Even those who we have dubbed as great philosophers have become incredible, unimaginable, and indescribable beings after entering the divine rank. No one knows why. There is a vague line between the holy rank and the divine rank, but no one dares to cross it easily, and those who have the courage to cross it have not had a good ending. Charlotte felt a chill on her back when she heard this, and then asked, "The blood ancestors of the Blood Clan?" Juno Arthur said lightly, "I don't know what they have become, but they definitely have not retained their original sanity. Although they seem to be able to think and communicate, but their responses have become regular. Life is an uncertain thing. Stupid people can succeed through hard work. Smart people can suddenly do extremely stupid things. Honest people can suddenly become fierce. Cowardly people can become brave to protect something. Despicable people also have some things they are unwilling to sell. Life will not always react the same way to the same thing. For example, if the younger generations of the Blood Clan repeatedly ask about a certain practice secret, I will become impatient, kick them out, and never answer the question again. But the blood ancestors, their responses are regular. Do you know how terrible this is? This means that they have no thoughts, can't think, and are no longer wise." Charlotte suddenly heard the AI, and felt a bit of a chill, thinking that such a thing would never appear in this world, and only more terrifying things could appear. Although he didn't know what the evil gods had become, he knew that those things must have lost control of themselves. Charlotte thought to himself, "No wonder, every time I come into contact with evil gods, I always feel that they are a little weird, as if something was wiped out and they became objects, not life. They will be angry, but it always seems that their anger is not right." My diary, it's also quite weird, full of inexplicable contradictions. Juno smiled and said, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to contact Amabella, which can correct many of my wrong perceptions." Charlotte wanted to ask, what did Juno do to Amabella just now? But in the end, she didn't ask anything. He raised his hand to take back the Holy Light Kingdom, this legendary battleship. Juno suddenly said, "It's not complete yet, try not to use it in combat. Even if you have a chance to repair it in the future, you must be careful. The evil god is always unpredictable. There is one more thing, I'm not sure, but Amabella seems to have undergone new mutations. Well, if one day you find that he has signs of breaking free, or other anomalies, abandon it as soon as possible and run as far away as you can. The kingdom of the Holy Light God should not appear in this world. I don't know who built it, or what method was used to build it, but it should not appear in this world." Charlotte suddenly thought of the Serpent of Destiny. He knew that it was with the help of the Serpent of Destiny that St. Michael Island was able to build this legendary battleship. Juno said that it should not appear in this world, which should be true. Without the help of one of the righteous gods, the Serpent of Destiny, he should not appear. It is even impossible for him to appear. Charlotte also remembered that the logbook of the Holy Light Kingdom recorded that this legendary battleship went to the Violent Sea and encountered the deep-sea monster Acris, which became like this. Suddenly, He remembered that the northern fleet of the Misu family seemed to have gone to the violent sea and suffered heavy losses. He couldn't help but change his train of thought, and thought to himself, what is there in the violent sea that can attract the exploration of the old king and Grand Duchess Misu, or one day, I will also go to the violent sea to experience the mystery there? This thought only came up for a second, and Charlotte knocked it to death. What raging sea? Only a sick person would go there. As long as he could solve the crisis of the evil god, he would never participate in any dangerous events, never get involved in wars, never take risks, and stay honestly in the Duchy of Mecklen, living a peaceful life with Anne. Charlotte looked a little dazed, and then she reappeared in the real world, leaving Juno's dream. Juno put the coffee to her lips, smiled slightly, and said, "Today is very fruitful, Charlotte, you are my best student, no doubt about it." Charlotte was about to say a few humble words, when she heard Juno change the subject and whispered, "After you're in and have been married for decades, your lover will grow old or even die. Have you ever thought about turning her into an immortal?" Charlotte was about to answer, but Juno said, "Don't answer me. This is a question that requires long-term thinking. You have to think about it for at least a few decades before you can get the correct answer." Charlotte took a deep breath and said, "I'll consider it." He glanced at the beautiful blood servant in the room. Juno Arthur had 3 blood servants of the same type. Each of them was extremely beautiful, gentle and graceful, and had an aristocratic demeanor. He couldn't help asking, "I recently accepted a blood servant, but the training was very slow. Does the teacher have any tricks to teach?" Juno shook his head. Of course he had seen that blood servant. He was not an ordinary person. Even if he had heard of his name, the younger brother of Duke Mossard, Gareth Mossard, was a famous strong man in the old continent. Although he was not as good as him, he could be ranked in the top 20 among the strong men of various countries in the old continent. He casually asked Charlotte how this big boy came from. Charlotte told Juno about the battle that day, and Juno listened with relish. Finally, he said, "It turns out that Antonio was promoted to the 24th level because he was favored by Ms. Black Moon. He is really lucky. The Bretons, father and son, have too much good luck. A family favored by the Serpent of Fate is indeed enviable." Charlotte thought about it, as if she was also favored by the Serpent of Fate, and whispered, "I should be quite enviable too." Juno smiled and said, "More than that, if envy could be turned into a spear, you must be riddled with holes now." Charlotte hurriedly said, "I don't think I'm very enviable. For example. Juno couldn't help laughing again, and said, "If you keep giving me examples, I'll shoot you. What an enviable guy." Chapter 456, It's just a monster, not an evil god? Then, when it came to sailing, Charlotte never encountered the Black Phoenix fleet again. He corrected the route according to the coordinates, and after 7 or 8 days, he saw an island in front of him. This island has obvious signs of human habitation, and there is even a port on the southeast side. It is a natural bay with cliffs on both sides. Someone built a port because of the terrain, but it has been abandoned for a long time. When Charlotte saw this island, he knew why the 3 things were here. He didn't need to look for the sea serpent Vasuji, nor did he need to look for the king of giant whales, and he didn't need to look for the ancient Maduro tree, because someone had collected the snake teeth, giant whale tears and ancient tree branches and hid them on this mysterious island. There should be a mysterious treasure here. I don't know who occupied this place back then, and why it was abandoned. Charlotte had already told Juno Arthur the purpose of this trip, but Juno Arthur had no interest in going ashore, so he only brought Agon, Gareth Meckland and Andreas to the island. Although Charlotte is only at the 18th level, with her light agility x12, she looks very much like the masters of light martial arts in ancient martial arts novels on Earth, much more handsome than the spiders crossing the water and the elephants crossing the river in modern martial arts novels. Charlotte stepped on the waves and landed on the island without the help of her 3 subordinates. He confirmed with a golden goat herald that this island had never appeared on any sea chart, nor in any pirate legends, let alone any documented records. Even the documents and materials that Charlotte moved away from St. Michael's Island did not record this island. Observing from a distance, this island is really not small. It should be several hundred square kilometers, enough to accommodate a small town for humans. It's just that it is too far from the land, and there is a shortage of various materials for life. If a town is built here, it will definitely be a very bad town. When Charlotte thought of this, he remembered the labyrinth of Agmaris. He no longer had any page of the labyrinth. Although there were abandoned ports and traces of human habitation on this island, there was no city anymore. Even the ruins could not be found. It was unlikely to be turned into a labyrinth, otherwise it would be an excellent target for maze making. Charlotte stood on the island, looking around, and was about to go deeper into the island. The three men who followed him slowly landed, especially Andreas, whose face flushed. After his feet touched the ground, he whispered, "It's a bit strange that we can't fly here." Ogon also looked solemn. He said, "This is not a no-fly zone, or a gravity magic circle. It is the island itself that resists the extraordinary power above the holy level." Gareth Mecklin took a deep breath, and his blood energy surged all over his body. His body was like a layer of blood-colored armor. He said, "Father, let me lead the way for you." He strode forward. Ogon and Andreas hurriedly covered their mouths, their faces flushed. After a long time, they suppressed their smiles and followed Gareth's footsteps. Charlotte shrugged. He didn't want to do this. The four climbed the cliff beside the island. From the cliff, they could see that 8 warships slowly sailed into this natural harbor. The Dalmabadis was the first to dock. But no one got off the ship. This was Charlotte's order, not allowing anyone else to set foot on the island before he had explored it. So far, this order was wise, and the island was indeed a bit strange. Charlotte was protected by 3 saints, but he was still very alert. He suddenly sensed that something was passing through the bushes next to him, so he took out a withered rose and fired a shot. This blood-sucking pistol that Charlotte bought from Julian had not been used for a long time as Charlotte's strength improved, but when exploring the island, this pistol was obviously more suitable. It could be hidden in the blood-sucking vortex like the blood rose, and it had moderate power. It could also replenish blood-sucking bullets at any time, without worrying about the lack of ammunition. Charlotte had been trained under Juno for so long that her marksmanship had improved by leaps and bounds. Even though it was a low-level extraordinary pistol, she was still hit by the thing with 1 shot. Charlotte felt that there were suddenly more than a dozen bullets in the withered rose, but the thing in the bushes just shook for a moment and tried to dodge quickly, which surprised him. The 3 saints around him took out their weapons. Andreas shouted and swept his sword. A transparent air blade cut countless plants and trees together, allowing them to see the thing. It should be a human? But it is definitely not a human. It is wearing a very old Navy uniform, but it is definitely not the style of any country in the old world. It is Snow White, the kind of Snow White that is not human. There is only 1 toe on its bare feet. It is not that the toe is broken, but it is born with only 1 toe. There is only 1 bent and thick finger on both hands, which is also born like this. It also has only 1 eye, which is burning and has a strange look. It has cruel, hateful, bloodthirsty, and other extremely evil emotions towards the 4 people. It has no mouth and nose. Andreas whispered, "It's the Navy uniform of the Sherlock dynasty." Gareth also said, "I've never seen or heard of this kind of monster." Ogon said in a deep voice, "It's not an orc either." Facing the 4 people, the monster showed naked malice, but it was also obviously a little afraid, especially afraid of the withered rose in Charlotte's hand. It was shot just now, and it would definitely not feel good. Charlotte thought for a while and said, "Kill it." The monster seemed to understand Charlotte's words and roared to the sky, but it had no mouth, so it could only make gestures and could not make any sound. Gareth made a false attack, and a huge energy swept over, and the monster completely disappeared from this world. Although the monster was killed, Charlotte was still a little uneasy. He whispered, "Let's be careful." Ogon shrugged his shoulders and muttered, "It's just a monster, not an evil god." Charlotte smiled dumbly. He also felt that he was too nervous. Ogon and Gareth were both strong saints of the 22nd level, and Andreas had already broken through the 20th level. With this combination, the incarnation of the evil god could be resisted for several rounds, let alone a mere monster. Even if he himself was a high-level extraordinary person of the 18th level, it would be difficult for him to meet an opponent below the saint level. Charlotte and his friends circled the cliff. The original facilities of this abandoned port were quite complete. Many buildings were carved out of the cliff and led to the other side of the cliff. The project was very huge. If a large number of manpower was not used, there must be extraordinary people involved in the construction. Charlotte did not plan to explore this port carefully. He was looking for extraordinary objects to repair the Holy Light God Kingdom, not to explore an adventure here, so he quickly took the 3 saints and walked into the depths of the island. Although the island seemed to be resisting the extraordinary power above the saint rank, it was difficult to fly. If Andreas and the others were willing to consume a huge amount of fighting spirit, they could still fly. There was no obstacle in using extraordinary power. Charlotte and the others brought sufficient weapons and were not afraid of encountering any danger. The four of them walked for half an hour, and Charlotte suddenly jumped high. With his level of light agility x12, this jump was a full 40 to 50 kilometers high. He looked back in midair and could still see the cliff. Just as he was slightly relieved, he saw countless monsters they had just killed gathering on the edge of the cliff from all directions. Charlotte landed on the ground and whispered what he saw. Andreas said, "Mr. Juno is in charge of the fleet, so there is no need for us to go back for help. I suggest that we continue to move forward. Those monsters must have a nest. Although we are not afraid, it will be very troublesome to kill so many monsters." Ogon and Gareth also took off one after another. They could actually fly. Although they consumed a lot of fighting spirit due to the rejection of this mysterious island, they still determined a direction. The four of them quickened their pace and soon encountered a beast. This beast was huge, even comparable to an elephant on Earth, but it looked like a wolf with a king's head. It was extremely ferocious and pounced on the four of them. Charlotte fired 18 shots in a row before killing the ferocious beast, but the beast killed by the withered rose also charged the withered rose with hundreds of blood energy bullets. This shows that its vitality is strong. Charlotte could even feel that this strange beast was even an extraordinary magical beast, but its level was not very high, probably about level 2 or 3. Several people were not interested in exploring the beast. Only Andreas tried to cut it with a sword, and found that his fighting spirit was as easy as cutting tofu, so he lost interest in the beast. He wanted to see if the beast had anything and collect it. After encountering this beast, Charlotte and his friends gradually encountered some life. The life on this island was very strange, almost all of which were rare in the old continent, and there were even no species at all. Charlotte did not want to kill more. He came here to find things and repair the Holy Light Kingdom, not to explore here. What's more, what is there to explore here? Charlotte calculated the distance. They were almost deep into the center of the island, and suddenly heard a ho-ho cry. A group of blue-skinned, slender, and more than 3 meters tall giants rushed out of the woods and aimed at them with very crude bows and arrows. Charlotte couldn't help but shouted, "Is there another rare intelligent species here?" A blue giant, obviously a female, shouted a few times, and Charlotte actually understood what she heard. These guys were speaking the language of the Sherlock dynasty, which he happened to have learned in college. Chapter 457, Blue Sky Tribe, the only residents of Solomon Island. Charlotte said in Farsi, "This female blue giant, let us put down our weapons and follow them." Andreas shrugged his shoulders and said, "Do they think we are afraid of these bows and arrows? Unless they are extraordinary bows and arrows, the power of ordinary bows and arrows is not as good as that of standard guns. Not to mention facing the saint level, even ordinary extraordinary people can use energy to protect their bodies and resist the arrows." The female blue giant was very angry and shot an arrow at the feet of the four people. The warning was very obvious. Charlotte could kill monsters, but she didn't have such a strong killing intention for intelligent creatures. Moreover, these blue giants were obviously not warlike. They only came to search because they broke into their territory. Of course, he didn't have too many extravagant expectations for the civilization of these blue giants. Charlotte said loudly in Sherlock, "We are adventurers passing by. We have no hostility. It is impossible for us to lay down our weapons, but we are willing to communicate in a friendly manner." The female blue giant did not expect that Charlotte would actually say what they said, and said, "This is our territory. Outsiders are not welcome." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "You are on the island, so you must be in short supply from outside, such as weapons. We are willing to give you a batch of weapons, made of metal, in exchange for the status of guests." Although these blue giants have bows and arrows, they are just ordinary branches bent and tied with ropes. The power is very weak. The arrows they use are also very rough, and there are not even iron arrowheads. They just sharpen the front ends of hard branches. They also have some spears. Some people's spears have metal heads, but they are all rusty. It is obvious that they have been passed down for a long time. This is a tribe that has a civilization heritage, but it should be very isolated from civilization. Charlotte's words moved the blue giants. Charlotte drew out the blood rose and shook it, chopping a small tree beside her into 16 or 17 pieces. This swordsmanship, in the martial arts world, can be called a grandmaster level. Of course, What made the blue giants envious was not his superb swordsmanship, but the sharpness of the blood rose. The female blue giant said, "If you are willing to give us 5 metal weapons, we are willing to treat you as guests." Charlotte smiled slightly, opened her left hand, opened a magic mirror, took out 5 rapiers from it, and threw them to the female blue giant. These blue giants were quite simple and honest. After getting 5 ordinary rapiers, they quickly regarded Charlotte and the others as friends. The female blue giant couldn't let go of a rapier and gave the other 4 to the people around her, saying, "My name is Singelina. I'm the daughter of the chief of the Blue Sky tribe. We are the only residents of Solomon Island, and no outsiders have come here for a long time. On behalf of the Blue Sky tribe, welcome you. You are guests of the Blue Sky tribe. Ogon is an orc, and Gareth has almost forgotten everything, but Andreas is a serious nobleman. He has also been to Black Phoenix University. Although he is not particularly proficient in Sherlock, he can barely speak a few words." He shouted, "We have just been attacked by a monster. Do you know what they are?" Singelina's face suddenly showed worry and panic. And she shouted, "That's the Lingmo. Let's go quickly. As long as we return to the tribe, we won't be afraid of them." Andreas wanted to say that even if they didn't go to any tribe, they were not afraid of the Lingmo. Charlotte smiled and said, "Okay. We'll go with you." These blue giants were quite kind. After receiving the gifts, they never asked them to give up their weapons. In addition, Charlotte, Mecklen and the other 4 people actually had no obvious weapons. They all had ways to hide their weapons, and they were not fully armed. Even Charlotte was only holding an alchemical pistol, the withered rose. No one knew that he had at least 10 weapons hidden on him, and he could even open the infinite mirror realm to take out more weapons. Even Charlotte didn't know how many weapons the other 3 saints had. Ogon might even have a saint-level dragon hammer. As Singelina hurriedly led the way, she said, "The Lingmo are a terrible monster on the island. Each of them is equivalent to a supernatural being, and they can also imitate our appearance and change into our appearance. Fortunately, our Blue Sky tribe has developed some methods over the years to distinguish the Lingmo, otherwise they would always want to change into our appearance and blend into the tribe." Charlotte was quite surprised and asked, "These Lingmo can also change? How smart are they?" Singelina said, "In their original form, Lingmo are cruel and very irritable, and they cannot communicate. But after becoming our people, their words and deeds are almost the same as ours. They should have very high intelligence." Charlotte pondered for a while and thought to herself, "Why does it sound, these blue giants are no different from Lingmo? If Lingmo turn into their appearance, they will be no different from them? Doesn't it mean there is no difference?" Charlotte asked, "How do you distinguish the Lingmo that have changed into your appearance?" Singelina said, "They have no gender." Charlotte took a look at the group of blue giants and suddenly thought of an indecent detail. She thought to herself, "The demons cannot change their gender. I'm afraid they haven't seen it before. Maybe if they have seen it, they can change into the same gender. It's a pity that I didn't bring a few foreign movies with me when I traveled here. Otherwise, if I played them for these demons, maybe there would be a group of respected teachers in this world." Charlotte and the others followed the group of blue giants and ran for more than an hour before they saw a giant tree. The trunk of this giant tree was more than 10 acres in size. From the branches, countless air roots grew and rooted in the ground, making this giant tree look like a sky curtain. Under this giant tree, there were about a few hundred blue giants and even a dozen children. However, the height of these blue children was not much different from that of ordinary strong men. They were agile and jumped on the giant tree, as flexible as monkeys, almost as good as people who had just mastered the art of agility. When the children saw Singelina and the others coming back, they all came to greet them. When they saw Charlotte and the others, they were even more curious. Charlotte immediately took out more than 10 magnum handguns from the magic mirror and distributed them to the children. She also gave each of them a box of bullets and taught them how to load bullets and how to shoot. When they followed Singelina to the giant tree, they had already become familiar with a dozen blue children. Chapter 458. There are still such kind divine creatures in the world. An old female blue giant, though slightly puzzled, said to Charlotte and the others in a friendly manner, "How did you get to Solomon Island, guests?" Charlotte said, "Of course by boat." The old female blue giant suddenly became excited and shouted, "There's a boat. You actually have a boat." She closed her eyes, and seemed to be very excited. The big tree above her head suddenly burst into light, and countless feather-like glimmers fell. Charlotte stretched out her hand, and a glimmer merged into her palm. She suddenly heard a voice, but the voice was very short and he did not hear it clearly. Charlotte's heart moved slightly, and 8 flaming hands flew out, expanding to the size of a bed. As expected, countless feathers and glimmers fell, and he faintly heard a complete voice, "Friends of the Blood Clan and humans. Welcome. Please take the Blue Sky tribe out of this island." Charlotte's heart moved slightly, and he silently said, "Are you the ancient Medoro tree?" "I am probably the last ancient Medoro tree in the world. My kind have been cut down by the people of the Sherlock dynasty and used to build legendary warships. If you are willing to take the Blue Sky tribe away, I am willing to offer my trunk for you to use to build legendary warships." Charlotte was shocked. He really didn't expect that there are such kind, divine creatures in the world. He can be sure that this living ancient Medoro tree is 100% a divine creature. Before Charlotte could respond, he felt a wave of malice sweeping over him, covering the sky. He looked up at the sky and saw a black cloud of insects passing through the sky. This cloud of insects looked very familiar, and Charlotte couldn't help but exclaim, "Queen bee!" This cloud of insects was made up of countless queen bees. Charlotte had seen this strange insect in 2 places, one was the insect bag, and the other was on the queen bee. He never thought that he would see this strange insect on this mysterious island. A flash of inspiration suddenly occurred to Charlotte, and she suddenly shouted, "I understand." Andreas couldn't help but ask, "What do you understand?" Charlotte pointed to the towering tree and said, "The people of the Sherlock dynasty used its kind to build 7 ancient magic warships." He pointed to the sky again and said, "Those queen bees are also one of the materials for building warships. The queen bee has been traversing the 7 seas, and there are countless legends about it. Many people have seen it." Andreas has naturally heard of this legendary warship built in the Sherlock dynasty. He was reminded by Charlotte and woke up, shouting, "Indeed. The Sherlock dynasty built a total of 7 legendary warships, and only such a giant tree can be the material for building legendary warships." When he looked at the ancient Medoro tree, his face was eager. After all, it represented a legendary warship. Legendary warships are much more powerful than magic alchemy warships. Owning one means that you can traverse the 7 seas. The golden goat Herolf was so arrogant back then. Charlotte nodded, thinking, the Sherlock dynasty must have cut down 7 ancient Medoro trees and built 7 legendary warships. The Holy Light Kingdom was probably also built with ancient Medoro trees, otherwise they would not have required branches from ancient Medoro trees when repairing it. The giants of the Blue Sky tribe seemed to be very afraid of the insect clouds in the sky. They all showed a look of fear. Even the female leader of the tribe shouted loudly, asking the tribesmen to hide under the ancient Medoro trees and stare at the sky nervously. Agon said, "Should we help? Disperse the insect clouds in the sky?" The elephant man Agon is the 22nd level. Although there are many insect clouds, they really can't scare him. With the elephant man's whole body, these queen bees will be shocked to death if they fall on him. Gareth was also eager to try. After he switched to the blood butcher, his desire for blood and vitality became stronger and stronger, but he was usually suppressed by Charlotte and could not absorb it to his heart's content. Charlotte shook his head and said, "No need to do that." He took out the insect bag, grabbed it with a flaming hand, and flew high into the sky. These queen bees, who looked like a cloud of insects, felt a breath of the insect bag and tried their best to drill into it. However, the number of insect clouds this time was too large, and the small insect bag had no way to swallow them all in a short time. As the cloud of insects swirled, the insect bag didn't know how many queen bees it had swallowed. Suddenly, a faint thought emerged. Charlotte keenly captured this faint thought. He tried to communicate with it, but found that this thought was very strange. Charlotte almost subconsciously invested in a mathematical model. After accepting this mathematical model, this thought became orderly. Charlotte found it interesting and input some basic mathematical concepts, theorems, and calculation rules. The feedback he received was like a very slow computer system that could respond to every one of his instructions, but very slowly. Charlotte didn't understand why the worm bag had this wisp of thought. After a while, he was surprised to find that the worm bag's reaction had actually improved a little. He thought of a possibility, but he didn't believe his guess at all. He input his math knowledge one by one, and repeatedly used mixed operations to verify it. Soon he confirmed one thing, which he couldn't believe at all, but it was almost true. When the worm bag contained enough queen bees, a faint thought would be born. When the number of queen bees jumped to another level, this faint thought could even produce thinking. When he input the math, This thought could even give feedback. Charlotte had an absurd idea. Could each of these queen bees be considered a computing unit? If countless queen bees gather together, the computing power will be greatly improved, thus giving birth to consciousness. Are these little things neurons or something like that? Charlotte was inputting various calculation questions to test the number of calculations of the bag of insects after storing several times the number of queen bees it can hold. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He immediately abandoned mathematics and input the Blood Clan's mantra instead. He didn't know how many times he tried, but suddenly hundreds of queen bees exploded and turned into a black bat. Charlotte was overjoyed. He finally knew that a single queen bee was not very powerful. Hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of them were not a threat to mid and high-level transcendence. But once the number exceeds a certain level, it is no longer a swarm. The faint thoughts of all the queen bees can be linked together, thus giving birth to a strange consciousness. As the number of queen bees continues to expand, this strange consciousness can even use extraordinary powers and possess various superpowers. It all depends on how the master trains it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 459, You Have a Boat, Can You Take Us Away? The cloud of insects was so huge that the bag of insects seemed to have not reduced after swallowing for dozens of minutes. Charlotte also understood why the giants of the Blue Sky tribe were afraid of this cloud of insects, because after the number reached a critical point, this cloud of insects could even burst out with power above the saint level. He now finally understood why this group of queen bees could drive a legendary warship. The cloud of insects in the sky suddenly burst into a sharp whistle, and a force burst out, forcibly repelling the bag of insects. Charlotte hurriedly stretched out her hand and took back this strange object. He did not dare to use it to swallow the queen bee again. The cloud of insects in the sky obviously reacted. The cloud of insects suddenly stagnated slightly, and then a force like a landslide came down from the sky. The ancient Maduro tree released a faint light. Except for the place protected by this ancient tree, all the trees and gravel on the ground seemed to be stirred by an invisible big hand, and the power was comparable to a natural disaster. Even the 3 saint levels around Charlotte changed color slightly. The power that this cloud of insects could burst out was beyond imagination and completely unreasonable. After the insect cloud launched a shocking attack, countless queen bees moved and formed a new insect cloud. Then, a meteor shower fell from the sky, and countless fireballs ravaged the earth, exploding large pits of varying depths everywhere. In an instant, the insect cloud changed its arrangement and combination 7 or 8 times, and released 6 or 7 kinds of power. Fortunately, the Blue Sky tribe was protected by the ancient Madura tree and was not damaged, but the ground around the ancient tree looked as if it had been ravaged by the evil god. It looked terrible. The insect cloud flew around in the sky for a while, and suddenly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. The giants of the Blue Sky tribe came out from under the ancient Maduro tree, with lingering fear. Singelina asked curiously, "What did you use to collect so many queen bees?" Charlotte smiled and said, "It's a secret treasure called the bag of insects." Singelina was very envious and said, "If we also had bags of insects, we wouldn't be afraid of the queen bee cloud. They are too scary, even scarier than the spirit demons." Charlotte couldn't help asking, "On Solomon Island, besides spirit demons and queen bees, are there any other dangers?" Singelina said, "Of course there are many. There are dozens of dangers on this island. Spirit demons and queen bee swarms are not the most powerful. Those more terrifying dangers." She suddenly shuddered with fear and said, "I don't know how many lives of our tribe have been taken away. We used to be a large tribe with more than 10,000 people, but now there are only a few people left. Do you have a boat? Can you take us away? We don't want to live on Solomon Island anymore." Charlotte smiled and said, "Sure, my ship is big enough to take you all on board. However, there is a small problem, that is, you look different from us, which will scare my crew members." Singelina whispered, "We can hide in the corners of the ship, just give us a little water and it will be fine." Charlotte said, "How can that be? You treat us as guests, and we can't treat friends like this. I have a secret method that is not passed on, called Beast Scout Transformation. This method can turn you into humans, then everyone will be happy." Singelina was very surprised and said, "Are you willing to teach our Blue Sky tribe the precious secret method?" Charlotte replied, "Of course I am willing, after all, we are all friends." He opened the magic mirror and took out a stack of illustrations. This is the draft that Charlotte commissioned for the novel. The painting in this world is more backward than that of classical Europe, and many painting techniques have not been invented. Although Charlotte himself can't draw, he has seen countless two-dimensional drawings. He taught these techniques one by one to the painters who commissioned the works, and thus obtained a large number of beautiful drawings. However, Charlotte had only memorized a few novels, so a lot of drawings had not been used yet. Charlotte distributed these illustrations to all the blue giants, and then began to teach the Beast Scout transformation technique. Andreas couldn't help but complain, "Charlotte really likes to popularize this extraordinary secret method." Ogon said, "I think Mr. Mecklen's approach is painstaking, and it can indeed solve the problem fundamentally. Once everyone can transform into an orc, and every orc can also transform into a human, there will be no more orcs in the world. Of course, it can also be said that there are orcs everywhere. Anyway, if that time comes, there will be no disputes between orcs and humans." Andreas couldn't help but sneer, "That's impossible. You know, if everyone can transform into orcs, and orcs can transform into humans, everyone in this world must be an extraordinary person." Although the Beast Scout transfiguration technique can only cultivate a first-level extraordinary person, a first-level extraordinary person is also an extraordinary person. How can everyone in this world be extraordinary? If Charlotte can really do this, I'm afraid that unifying the old and new continents will be just a matter of a snap of the fingers. Ogon sighed. He only knew that Andreas was right. It is impossible for everyone in this world to be an extraordinary person. Even if only 1% of people, or even 1,000th of people are extraordinary, it is almost impossible. He whispered, "But that is always a direction." Andreas couldn't bear to say anything. He knew the situation of the orcs. The Black Phoenix was far away from the southern continent and had not been attacked by the orcs. So he was quite sympathetic to the orcs. He could only say, "I also hope Charlotte can succeed." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Singelina's body shining with light and transformed into a charming girl with incredibly long legs, a full figure and a delicate face. He immediately became dry-mouthed. Charlotte didn't expect that this female blue giant would have such a talent in the Beast Scout transformation technique, and even practiced this secret technique at a speed that was almost catching up with a holy level. Of course, Antonio's practice of this technique was just like this. However, when he saw that the old female blue giant also transformed into a graceful, mature and beautiful young woman, the speculation just now suddenly emerged in his mind. Lingmo. These blue giants should be the same thing as the monsters we saw. They are all Lingmo. Singelina said that Lingmo can change into the appearance of others. The blue giants can learn the Beast Scout transformation so quickly. It can only be a racial talent. They are the same existence. What kind of place is Solomon Island? Why are there so many strange existences? Chapter 460. I want to release a big guy, so that everyone doesn't have to worry. Georgette Hadrian floated in the air, staring at the 8 warships for a long time, but without any action. He didn't know how many holy ranks were hidden in Charlotte's fleet, but with a legendary warship and 7 magic alchemy warships, even the rising military god of the old world was not sure to break through the defense of such a fleet. Georgette Hadrian turned around with all the magic alchemy warships after learning that Charlotte's fleet was chasing them, intending to fight Charlotte to the death at sea. He took away almost all the warships of the Black Phoenix, and had 15 magic alchemy warships under his command. His strength was still above Charlotte's fleet, but this was the last of the Black Phoenix, and he didn't want to use it to exchange with Charlotte. After all, without these 15 magic alchemy warships, it would be difficult for these Black Phoenix people to survive, even if they went to the New World. Georgette Hadrian knew that the evil gods in the New World were fighting in chaos, and the world was already broken. Georgette Hadrian thought to himself, "We need to find a way to split this fleet. If we can attract 1 or 2 of their warships, I can capture them with the force of thunder. Not only will our strength not be weakened, but it will be strengthened. What method should we use to split this fleet?" Georgette Hadrian thought of 7 or 8 methods, but none of them were sure. He thought to himself, "I'll go back and read Anne Mecklen's novels. This person's novels are really well written. Many of her strategies are simply incredible, but surprisingly useful. If I hadn't read her novels, I wouldn't have learned the strategy of burning my boats and attacking the armies of the 4 countries separately, and I would have succeeded." He was thinking about the strategy when he suddenly saw the insect cloud rising into the air, and his face changed slightly. Georgidi Hadrian was at the peak of the saint level, and he immediately sensed that the power of this insect cloud was no less than his own. When the insect cloud dispersed, he was about to return to the fleet when he saw those humanoid monsters. They were originally just wandering on the edge of the cliff, but suddenly, as if they had received some signal, they turned around and ran away, and soon disappeared into the dense forest on the island. While running, these demons would suddenly burrow into the ground and then disappear without a trace. The monsters that were originally all over the mountains and plains soon burrowed into the ground, as if they had never appeared. Georgidi Hadrian saw two kinds of monsters in succession, each of which was extremely strange. He couldn't help but be a little alert, and secretly thought, this island not only has a mysterious power that resists the extraordinary above the holy level, but also has so many strange things. Could it be the nest of some evil god? Or some secret place? Georgidi Hadrian's fleet was docked on the other side of Solomon Island. He explored the enemy alone, but only saw the fleet, not Charlotte, Ogon, Gareth, Andreas and others. The mysterious ancient Medoro tree blocked his perception, so the last military god of the Black Phoenix dynasty did not know that Charlotte was not on the ship, but on the island. If he knew, he would definitely go to kill Charlotte first regardless of everything. Charlotte didn't know that there was a great crisis. He didn't expect that he had avoided the route, and Georgidi Hadrian would catch up. He not only gave away weapons, but also taught precious secrets. He was greatly friendly in the Blue Sky tribe. There were blue giants who kept asking him for advice on the secrets of the beast god transformation. Even Andreas joined in. He was serious and taught the blue giants the secrets of the practice. Except for Charlotte and the others, no one knew that Andreas had never practiced this secret. Although there were not many blue giants who changed into human appearances, they changed according to the illustrations. Both men and women were handsome and not ordinary. Charlotte, who had experienced the bombardment of various resources on Earth, could not stand it. This group of people looked like characters from the second dimension, PS, and AI. Andreas could not stand it even more. Gareth, the big boy, and Gon the elephant were immune to the humans transformed by the blue giants. Gareth's aesthetics collapsed after his soul collapsed. Gon the elephant liked violent muscular women. After all, the aesthetics of elephants were different from those of other beastmen. Seeing Andreas' serious teaching, Charlotte slowly handed over the teaching work to the young man. He walked to the ancient Medoro tree, reached out and touched the ancient tree with divinity, and communicated with it in some thoughts. Charlotte soon realized that this ancient tree was not kind, but more like a prisoner who had been in prison for 1,000 years and could not move a step. It didn't care about life and death, and even wanted to die. So it didn't care at all that it was cut down and made into a legendary battleship. Charlotte's heart suddenly moved slightly, and she said to the tribe leader Angelina, who had changed into a graceful and beautiful young woman with a mature style, I want to release a big guy, so that everyone doesn't have to worry. Angelina smiled slightly, and she was quite charming. The tribe leader of the Blue Sky tribe said, we are in danger every day, and it's not so easy to be afraid. Charlotte took off a golden ring and put it on the ground. A huge battleship suddenly appeared on the ground. Although she had just declared that she was in danger every day and was not easily scared, Chief Angina still couldn't help but exclaimed and covered her mouth with her hand. Charlotte could no longer care about the chief. She pressed the ancient Medoro tree with both hands and conveyed her thoughts, can you integrate into the Holy Light Kingdom by yourself? I don't want to cut you down. Can you become a part of the Holy Light Kingdom while keeping your life? Charlotte repeatedly conveyed this thought, and soon he saw countless feathers of light from the ancient Medoro tree, which fell on the Holy Light Kingdom. Soon, a small tree grew in the middle of the magic circle at the bow. This small tree continued to grow, and the ancient Medoro tree that was originally rooted in the earth continued to wither. Soon, on the Holy Light Kingdom, there was a giant tree that covered the entire bow and was rooted in the deepest part of the magic circle, just like the original ancient Medoro tree. And where this ancient tree grew, only a dead trunk was left. Charlotte put away the tree trunk and said to the stunned blue giants, there is no ancient Medoro tree to protect you here. It is not safe enough. Please move to the Holy Light Kingdom. I will keep my promise and take you away. Chief Angela's face showed ecstasy, and she shouted, everyone aboard. We can leave Solomon Island. A dozen blue children were the most excited and scrambled to board the Holy Light Kingdom. When they saw the maze guards on the ship, they were even more curious and circled around the group of orc-like maze guards. Chapter 461 Amen. Get rid of this bitch who is trying to steal my power as the mother goddess of fertility. The fangs of the sea serpent Vasuji, the tears of the giant whale king. The one who collects all of these. I will serve you as my master, and am willing to carry you anywhere to explore all the treasures of the seven seas. Davakilado. Davakilado. Davakilado, how could it be you? Get out, amen. 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 Drive out this bitch who is trying to steal the power of the mother goddess of reproduction from me. Countless thoughts echoed in Charlotte's mind, and he suddenly felt as if he had done something extraordinary, as if this ancient model tree was not a good thing either. It turns out that a tree has a name? It's called Evercolado. This name is not in the style of the old world. Charlotte watched the blue giants move happily and boarded the holy light gouts country one after another. She always seemed to feel that she was a bit reckless. Forget it, who cares? We've finally got a branch of the ancient Maduro tree. Where should we look for the remaining two things? In theory, these two things should not be on land. Do we have to go to the nearby sea, or is there some place where treasures are hidden? I should ask Chief Angelina and her daughter Sangelina. Maybe we can get something. Charlotte raised his left hand, retracted the Holy Light Kingdom into golden ring, and said to the three men who followed him, let's continue to explore this island. Maybe we can get something. Gareth had no objection, nor did Agon. Although Andreas had some complaints, his opinion was not important. The place where the Blue Sky tribe lived was already the center of Solomon Island. They had the protection of the ancient Maduro tree, but they were just struggling to survive. When the ancient Maduro tree disappeared, countless strange auras arose around it. Although Charlotte was not afraid, she did not want to stay here. After all, there was no benefit in fighting these monsters. They quickly moved on. After they left, countless lingmo suddenly emerged from the place where the ancient Maduro tree grew. They were densely packed and seemed endless, just like potatoes that were uprooted. They looked very frightened and tried desperately to call out, but because they had no mouth or nose, they could not make any sound. Georgette Hadrian soon noticed this place. When the ancient Maduro tree existed, it blocked many things, including his perception, but when the ancient Maduro tree disappeared, the peak saint immediately realized that something was wrong. He flew to where the ancient Maduro tree grew, and watched the demons constantly coming out from the ground. Even though the Earl was very powerful and the pinnacle of the world, he still felt his scalp tingling. Georgette Hadrian murmured to himself, I finally know why Charlotte Mecklen came to this island. He really has a strange origin, and he is not a decent human being. In the eyes of the last military god of the Black Phoenix, it is impossible that Charlotte commanded such a powerful fleet for some small goal. Charlotte deviated from the route and did not pursue his fleet, so it could not be for the last fleet of the Black Phoenix. It can only be for this island. This island is so weird, and Charlotte came here sneakily. There must be 1,000 connections between the two, and the logic is perfectly closed. Georgette Hadrian exerted his strength and chopped it down fiercely. An invisible force split the lingmo that drilled out of the ground from the most densely packed place. With just one blow, dozens of lingmo were killed. He chopped down with both hands in succession, and in an instant, he cleaned up all the lingmo that drilled out of the ground. Charlotte was exploring forward, and suddenly felt the energy fluctuations. Looking back, she saw Georgette Hadrian who was showing his power. She was surprised and whispered, why is he here too? Hurry up and become invisible. Charlotte's red rattlesnake has 6 attributes: increased speed, agility x6, devouring life, activating bullets, anti-space, invisibility, and venom. But he seldom uses attributes other than the agility bonus. He even seldom uses 2 rattlesnakes. Agon hesitated and whispered, I can't be invisible. Andreas put his hands on their shoulders to help the two hide their shadows. Invisibility is not an advanced spell and it is not difficult to learn. However, for extraordinary people, invisibility is quite useless because they have too many ways to sense movement, and invisibility can only block the sight of ordinary people. But at this time, they are far enough away from Georgette Hadrian that invisibility can still play a role. Charlotte whispered, what is Georgette Hadrian doing? Why did he bombard the original site of the ancient Maduro tree? Agon said, after he leaves, we will go and take a look and we will know. Charlotte nodded and agreed with this opinion. After a while, Georgette Hadrian flew over their heads and flew to the other end of Solomon Island. The 4 people turned back and saw the countless lingmo killed by Georgette Hadrian, and they all gasped. Andreas said, these lingmo, seem to have drilled out of the ground, Ogon said. They look like the tubers of plants. Charlotte also broke out in a cold sweat. He had preconceived notions and tacitly assumed that those blue giants were the offspring of male and female reproduction, but when he saw these ligmas coming out from the roots of the ancient Maduro tree, he could only think of the most likely inference. Regardless of whether it was ligmas or blue giants, they were actually the products of the ancient Maduro tree, growing out from the rhizomes of this ancient tree. As for why they were divided into two races, only the evil god knew. Charlotte thought of the magic circle on the bough of the holy light god's kingdom. Every time he approached, the whisper of fate would give a warning, but the ancient Maduro tree had taken root on it. He couldn't help but shudder. Charlotte could only comfort herself like this: it doesn't matter. The holy light god's kingdom is also quite weird. He was about to propose going back to the fleet. After all, with teacher Juno on board, they no longer had to fear Georgiade Hadrian. For Charlotte, although Solomon Island was weird, the biggest threat was still Georgiade Hadrian. Andreas suddenly said, "There seems to be something down there." Charlotte looked down. It was pitch black and deep underneath where the ancient Maduro tree took root. He stopped Gareth, who was about to jump down. Although Gareth was very powerful and was not afraid of any danger, there was no need to take risks. Charlotte opened the 6 magic mirrors, and 12 mirror shadows walked out of them. This was the awakened supernatural power when the infinite mirror realm was upgraded to X5. It could reflect any enemy, or even oneself, and transform into a false character. It could briefly possess power that rivaled the original object, but of course the limit could not be higher than Charlotte himself. When the infinite mirror realm was upgraded to X6, Charlotte also awakened the mirror demon, but he had not found a suitable target yet. These mirror shadows were all enemies he encountered on the Black Phoenix battlefield. Their original strength was above the Saint level, but due to Charlotte's strength, they could only exert the strength of the 18th level. These shadows could last for about a few minutes. If there were only 1 or 2 mirror shadows, the duration would be many times longer, but Charlotte now wanted to explore what was below in the shortest possible time. A few minutes was enough, which was more efficient. Charlotte handed each of these shadows a few mirrors. Charlotte had ordered a large number of mirrors, and opened a mirror world in each of them. No matter where she went, she would immediately install one to expand her mirror world. Ogon, Gareth, and Andreas all knew that Charlotte was proficient in bloody glory, but they did not expect that his ability had reached such a strange level. They looked at the 12 Black Emperor warriors who were exactly the same as their original master and jumped into the cave below, and they all had a strange feeling. Andreas whispered, "You look more vampire than the group of vampires in Byron. I haven't seen the Van Gogh clan until the end of the war, but I have seen the infinite mirror world in you." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "I can't help it. Who let me have a good teacher? It was all taught by teacher Juno Arthur." Juno only taught him the vampire mantra, but Charlotte didn't mind and put the rest of her abilities under the education of this teacher. At this time, Juno Arthur was on the database, reading a novel leisurely. He said to the blood servant beside him, "Although Charlotte is talented in cultivation, I have seen a few young people of similar quality in my life, but his attainments in literature are simply shocking and open up the future. It's a pity that he is too busy. The manuscripts he publishes are not stable. Several novels have not been finished, and the serials are intermittent, which makes people worry whether they will be finished." The red-haired Drusinia said lightly, "Why don't you open up an exclusive dreamland for him to write manuscripts? As long as Mr. Mecklen sleeps, part of his consciousness will enter the exclusive dreamland for rushing manuscripts and keep writing. We can go in and copy the manuscripts he rushed out in the dream and give them to his quick-handed clerks." Juno clapped his hands and praised, "It's worthy of Drusinia. This doctrine is great." He suddenly looked up at the sky. Georgiade Hadrian only saw the fleet, but he didn't know that the strongest man in Bayern was on the database, but Juno discovered his existence. Juno Arthur smiled and said, "I'm sorry, this method can't be used for the time being. Little Charlotte is in trouble." Drusinia whispered, "Do you want me to go out and meet Mr. Mecklen and the others?" "Don't worry, I won't do anything bad, just bring them back." Juno smiled and replied, "Okay, but you can't be Georgiade Hadrian's opponent. Take my gun." Chapter 462. She may be from the Sherlock era. Juno Arthur is the best fighter in Byron, but his power and status are far higher than those of the former Count of Brittany and Count of Lanmrock. He has a total of 7 holy level famous guns, which he either funded, bought through trade, or obtained through adventures. On this voyage, he only brought one, the blood demon. It's a pistol. Juno grabbed the void and took out a dark red pistol. Its shape was simple, and no one could have imagined that it was a holy level alchemical firearm. Juno handed the blood demon to Drusilla and said, "Make sure you return safely." The beautiful red-haired woman took the blood demon, flew out of the dome base, and then merged into the air. Charlotte waited for a while at the deep pit left by the ancient Maduro tree, and then lost contact with the two mirror shadows. He shook his body and appeared a few hundred steps away, exactly where the two mirror shadows lost contact. He stretched out his palm and slapped it hard. A dark erosion power rushed down, but it invaded the ground for more than 10 meters and was dissolved by an invisible force. Andreas saw this and said, "I'll do it." He pulled out the rapier at his waist and stabbed it into the ground. A pleasant bird song was transmitted to the ground. After a few minutes, the youngest saint of the former Black Phoenix said solemnly, "There is a force below that offsets my fighting spirit. Unless we go down in person, we can't find that guy." Charlotte said, "Wait a little longer." After a while, his 12 mirror shadows ran out of power and dissipated on their own. He flipped his hand and a magic mirror appeared, showing the situation underground. Under the roots of the ancient Maduro tree, there are countless labyrinths, and in the labyrinths there are countless flesh sacks. In each flesh sack there is a lingmo, but some have grown up, and some have not yet fully developed. The picture in the mirror kept changing, and suddenly it froze. Charlotte, Ogon, Gareth, and Andreas all saw that in a huge flesh sack, there was a blue giant. Although it was only in its young state, it was completely different from the other lingmo. The four of them were silent for a while, and Andreas asked, "Charlotte, there will be no problem with the ancient tree you collected?" Charlotte said, "It's okay, my ship has a big problem too." Andreas thought about it carefully, and it was true. The Holy Light Kingdom was also very weird. Gareth said, "I'd better go down, there must be something special down there, otherwise my father's two mirror shadows would not suddenly lose contact, but I don't believe that the weird things down there can hurt a holy order." Charlotte was about to refuse when she heard a whistle and a huge monster with wings fell. He hurriedly pulled out the red and blue rattlesnake and was about to shoot when the monster folded its wings and transformed into a red-haired beauty. Charlotte recognized the other party as one of Juno's blood servants. She lowered the gun and asked, "Why are you here?" Charlotte was not worried that Lingmo would transform into one of their people, because this kind of transformation cannot have a corresponding increase in strength. It's just the same appearance. Juno Arthur of the second or third level. How could you be the real thing? The blood servants who can be brought by Juno are all extraordinary in strength, and it is impossible for Lingmo to impersonate them. However, Charlotte was still quite surprised, because the strength displayed by Drusilla was actually above the saint level. This red-haired beautiful blood servant ignored Charlotte and the others, but looked at the deep pit left by the ancient Maduro tree, and suddenly jumped with all her strength and jumped straight down. Charlotte was shocked and was about to rescue people, but then she came to her senses. Juno's blood servant didn't need him to rescue at all. Instead, Drusilla's behavior was a little strange, which was worthy of vigilance. Ogon suddenly whispered, "She might be from the Sherlock era." Charlotte was very surprised and asked, "How is it possible? How long has the Sherlock dynasty been destroyed?" Ogon said, "The Sherlock dynasty destroyed the ancient Orc kingdom, so our Orc's research on Sherlock is not inferior to you humans, and even deeper than most empires." Charlotte hesitated immediately. Vampires have a very long lifespan. It seems reasonable that Juno took a beautiful Sherlock who lived hundreds of years ago as a blood servant. He whispered, "Should we go down?" Gareth said, "I'll clear the way for my father first." He jumped down this time, and Charlotte didn't stop him. He was also curious about what was down there. Moreover, now their team has 4 saints, plus he is an 18th level, so if they really encounter any danger, they can handle it. As long as it is not an evil god, no monster can do anything to this team. Even if it is an evil god, they can resist for a while. Well, it's just that Charlotte may not be able to do it. He is not yet a saint. If a battle above the saint level breaks out, he will definitely die first. Gareth jumped into the cave, and his breath suddenly surged. Charlotte's face changed slightly. He taught Gareth to practice the blood butcher. The more people killed by this secret method, the more blood and essence it devoured, and the faster the strength increased, but he always restricted Gareth from devouring lives. Now there are countless spirit demons below, and no one restricts Gareth. This big boy is probably like a fish in water. Charlotte sighed and said to Ogon and Andreas, let's go down too, don't leave me too far. Andreas couldn't help but chuckle, and then covered his mouth. There are always some particularly funny things around Charlotte, but most of the time he has to hold it back, which is too hard. After Charlotte jumped into the cave, she released 8 flaming hands, which not only gave warnings but also illuminated the darkness. Sure enough, the demons in the flesh sacks had almost dried up and lost all their vitality. Both Drusilla and Gareth were nowhere to be found. Charlotte sensed it and found that the breath of both of them had disappeared in such a short while. He called out twice but there was no response. Andreas pointed and said, in other directions, the flesh sacks a little further away are intact, but there is no demon alive in that direction. Your mirror shadow also lost contact in that direction. They should have gone there. Charlotte nodded and said, let's go there too. He showed the red and blue rattlesnakes, and each of them loaded 20 rounds of magic armor-breaking bombs. He checked the energy magazines again. The 2 high-level alchemical pistols had sufficient energy magazines. Then he followed behind Ogon and Andreas and explored forward. Along the way, almost all the flesh sacks were destroyed, and the demons inside were also drained of their vitality. However, Gareth has this ability, and Drusilla also has this ability. It is hard to say who took action, or maybe both of them took action. Chapter 463 Tears of the Giant Whale King. It is unknown how many Lingmo are bred under the roots of the ancient Maduro tree. Among hundreds or even more Lingmo, there will be a blue giant cub. As for why the Blue Sky tribe does not think that Lingmo are of the same race as themselves, Charlotte guessed that when Lingmo reach maturity, they will be released directly and spread all over Solomon Island through the underground passages, but a blue giant will be extracted and born from somewhere in the ancient Maduro tree. He is now very sure that he made a wrong judgment at the beginning. The ancient Maduro tree is not kind, but completely crazy. This divine creature should look quite normal, but in fact it has lost all its sanity and may even have a tendency to self-destruct. Anyway, he, Amabella, and Amen, 3 evil things, are on the same boat, so it should be quite lively. Drusilla was running fast all the way. She suddenly stopped without looking back and said coldly, come out. Gareth, full of blood and energy, walked out of the darkness slowly. He stretched his body and said, I have condensed the 8 knights' certificates and re-entered the ranks of the 10,000 knights. I don't care who you are, but you are a threat to my father, and I must get rid of you. 8 visions appeared behind Gareth, including the god of war, documents, flags, hills, oceans, storms, etc. Every time he took a step, one of the visions behind him would disappear. When the last vision of the knight's certificate disappeared, a blood-red flagpole slowly emerged from the void. Garidi growled and grabbed the blood-red flagpole. Drusilla couldn't help but curse, this dog is really troublesome. She raised the blood demon and pulled the trigger. The blood-red flagpole in Gareth's hand rolled up and wrapped a ball of blood light and threw it out casually. Drusilla's spearmanship was also passed down by Juno. The blood demon fired continuously, and the 6 blood energy bullets were divided into 2 groups. Each group was in the shape of a Chinese character, blocking all of Gareth's attack routes. The blood-colored flagpole in Gareth's hand was a supernatural weapon that was fused with the 8 knights' certificates. It had no other superpowers, only blood-sucking and solidity. He swept the flagpole in his hand, and a strong blood-slaughtering aura detonated the 6 blood energy bullets in advance. The 2 fought several moves in the narrow cave, but neither of them got the upper hand. Drusilla had various superpowers, changing means, and extremely fast speed. She also had the blood demon in her hand, but she could deeply feel that Gareth's strength had recovered to the peak of the 22nd level, surpassing her by more than a line. The blood servant had never had such a high-level blood butcher. Drusilla didn't want to fight. She was finally able to leave Juno, and didn't want to waste time. She shook her body, turned from real to virtual, and disappeared from Gareth's sight. Gareth chose a direction without hesitation and chased after it. There is a small reason why the Blood Butcher is called the dog of the vampires. That is, the Blood Butcher is very sensitive to blood energy fluctuations and can find hidden vampires by perception. Along the way, Charlotte saw countless Lingmo being destroyed, and the bad omen in his heart became stronger and stronger. Drusilla is one of Juno's 3 night-use blood servants. Although Gareth has some problems, he is also on his side. But he doesn't understand why Drusilla ignores him at all, and Gareth seems to be out of control. When he passed by the cave where Drusilla and Gareth had fought, He couldn't help frowning. Of course, he could see that the two people who broke out in the battle here were vampires. In other words, there can be no other situation, that is, Drusilla and Gareth are fighting. Charlotte was puzzled and thought to herself, why did they fight? But what made Charlotte more worried was that he had been deliberately suppressing Gareth's power. After his soul was shattered by the flame demon, Gareth had extraordinary power, but he was completely unable to use it. Charlotte was worried that if he recovered his power, he would also recover his memory, so she deliberately let him practice the blood butcher. But from the performance in the battle, Gareth should have fully recovered the power of the 22nd level, but the power attribute has changed. Ogon and Andreas could also see the battle that took place here, and guessed that there must be a conflict between Drusilla and Gareth. The blood energy that was emanating was too strong. The two of them didn't understand why Gareth wanted to kill Drusilla. The situation became complicated, and the two of them became more cautious. After all, they all knew the origin of Gareth, Charlotte's good son. Maybe Gareth suddenly awakened? Charlotte suddenly heard a voice like the sound of the wind. He raised his hand and looked at the whisper of destiny on his hand. This golden snake ring, intentionally or unintentionally, led him to a passage that no one had ever been to. Charlotte did not hesitate and immediately gave up chasing Drusilla and Gareth, turning into a slightly narrower cave passage. Ogon and Andreas did not ask either. They knew that there were many dangers here, so they kept silent and just paid attention to protecting Charlotte. After Charlotte changed to a new passage, every time a fork in the road appeared in front of her, the whisper of destiny on her hand would give a slight prompt. He walked for more than 2 hours, and suddenly the view in front of him was clear. He actually walked out of the underground passage and came to a very small valley. There was a clear and transparent pool in the center of the valley. The pool was clear and nothing could be seen. There was no fish, and there were no plants such as duckweed. It was so clean that it was a little unnatural. Charlotte squatted down and reached her hand into the pool. The whisper of destiny stopped moving, but another golden ring suddenly produced a strange power and continued to suck water from the pool. Charlotte was startled, but soon came to her senses and whispered, "Tears of the King of Giant Whales." He waved his hand hastily to stop Ogon and Andreas from rushing over to save people, and stared at the 2 golden rings on his hands. The one that sealed the Holy Light God's kingdom was originally the exquisite curves of Amabella, but now there are 3 more things on it: a tree with lush roots and branches, a cute whale, and a little boy hiding under Amabella's skirt. 4 different images make up this strange golden ring. He can even sense that this golden ring has become more evil. Seeing that Charlotte Mecklen was fine, Ogon sat down cross-legged and said to Andreas, "I have never experienced so many adventures in my life." Following Mr. Mecklen, "Life is really too exciting." Andreas also sighed and said, "I didn't expect that after the war, life would become more exciting. There are so many strange things on such an island. You know, we are not here to explore this island, we are going to challenge the evil god. I even have a little illusion that even if we challenge the evil god, it should be like this." Chapter 464, 7 Monsters of the Violent Sea. The water in the pool was sucked out by the golden ring. Charlotte could even sense that he and the Holy Light Kingdom seemed to have some mysterious resonance. He stretched out his finger and gently turned the golden ring, saying, "Let's go." He was now very sure that the last rare item to repair the Holy Light Kingdom, the fangs of the sea serpent Vasuji, must also be on Solomon Island. And there was a high probability that it was in this underground cave. Charlotte touched the whisper of fate again, but the ring was completely silent. Helplessly, he could only plan to leave the valley first. Andreas suddenly shouted, "Look, there's a person under the pool." Charlotte then noticed that there was a piece of clothing in the mud at the bottom of the pool. Ogon jumped down, stretched out his hand and grabbed it, and indeed pulled out a person from the mud at the bottom of the pool. But he should have been dead for a long time. His face was pale, he was wearing an ancient Sherlock-style warrior suit, with a sword at his waist, and his eyes were closed. Andreas pulled out the sword from the man's waist and said, "An ordinary magic rapier is worth about 1 or 200 gold écus." Charlotte shrugged and said, "It's in good condition, worth at least 180 gold écus." If he had such a magic rapier back then, he would have been very happy, and he might even pass it down from generation to generation as a family heirloom, but such a low-level extraordinary weapon doesn't attract much attention from him now. This man is probably from the ancient Sherlock dynasty. From the quality of the magic rapier on his waist, it can be inferred that he must be an extraordinary person, but his grade is not too high. After all, Even Charlotte doesn't like to use low-level extraordinary weapons now. The three searched and found a purse, a few gold coins from the ancient Sherlock dynasty, and a piece of paper full of words on the man's body in addition to the magic rapier. It should have been torn from a notebook. One side is not shiny and has very fine serrations. Among the three people, Charlotte spoke the best old Sherlock. He translated word by word. I found the treasure. Oh no, there are monsters everywhere. I discovered a secret. Those monsters with only one eye might be blank slabs. If we stare at one and imagine hard, and transfer our souls over, we can be reborn in those monsters. I dare not try, Charlotte said. That's all. Andreas shrugged and said, who would want to be reborn in those monsters? Charlotte thought for a while and said, maybe it's just a transfer of memory, not rebirth. Those monsters are not without intelligence, but without memory. If they can obtain some kind of memory, they will have completely new changes, Ogon whispered. How did they appear? Charlotte and Andreas were silent for a while. Charlotte said, maybe a certain god created them. Andreas said, if it's a god, it can only be an evil god. I've never heard of any righteous god doing such a thing. Charlotte agreed and said, anyway, I found something and will leave here right away. He paused, thinking there was no need to hide it from the two of them, and said, I also need the fangs of the sea serpent Vasuji. Ogon was surprised and said, don't you know that Vasuji is a descendant of the dragon god? Charlotte was surprised and asked back, is Vasuji a descendant of the dragon of eternity and illusion? Ogon said, the dragon god is different from other gods. He has bred hundreds of descendants, most of whom are sea monsters. They have divinity, but almost no wisdom. They are cruel and tyrannical, and have power beyond all mortal creatures. Among the descendants of the dragon god, the sea serpent Vasuji is considered a very powerful monster. It is said that his body exceeds several thousand picometers and can easily stir up huge waves like a mountain. Unless it is a legendary battleship, human magic alchemy battleships are no match for him. How could you get his fang? What's more, Vasuji lives in the violent sea and will never come to the giant whale sea. Charlotte had not thought that the orcs would actually circulate such secrets. Of course, it might be more appropriate to call it gossip. She couldn't help but ask, is the deep sea monster Akras also a descendant of the dragon god? Ogon said, of course. Like Vasuji, he is one of the 7 most powerful sea monsters in the violent sea. Even among the descendants of the dragon god, there are not many giant sea monsters that can rival him and Vasuji. Charlotte said, maybe someone has obtained his fang and hidden it on Solomon Island. Ogon said, this is simply a myth. No one can pull out the fang of the sea serpent Vasuji, unless, Andreas suddenly interrupted, unless another god intervenes. For example, an evil god. Charlotte also thought of this possibility. Although Ogon was brave, his face changed slightly and he said, this is not a joke. Andreas pointed to the surroundings and said, this is not a joke. Look at this underground cave. Think about the ancient tree and the monsters it bred. Ogon was still reluctant and said, Mr. Mecklin, you already have the Dharma base. Why do you have to repair the Holy Light Kingdom? Charlotte took a deep breath and said, let's look for it first. If there are really some obstacles, I can give up looking for the teeth of the sea serpent Vasuji. The three ignored the Sherlock knight who had died for many years. Andreas took the antique rapier, Ogon put away the ancient gold coins, and Charlotte didn't want anything. After all, he had taken away the tears of the king of giant whales. This extraordinary and strange object is much more valuable than the antique rapier and gold coins. Charlotte, Ogon, and Andreas left the valley and returned to the underground cave. They had no direction for a while, and the whisper of fate was silent. Charlotte suggested to continue to catch up with Gareth, and Ogon and Andreas agreed. At this time, Gareth and Drusilla had fought at least 20 times. Drusilla relied on her many means and changes to escape calmly every time, but she could also feel that Gareth had become stronger and stronger after absorbing the blood and vitality of the spirits. This made Drusilla panic slightly. She was indeed the princess of the ancient Sherlock kingdom as Ogon guessed. Although she fell into the hands of Juno Arthur and became his blood servant, Drusilla always wanted to regain her freedom and had enough power to rival Juno. When she set foot on Solomon, Drusilla knew where this place was, and she also knew that her chance had come. Chapter 465, Hadrian of Georgia obtains a giant beast tooth. Charlotte and his group soon lost their target. The battle between Drusilla and Gareth destroyed a large area of the underground cave passage. Although Charlotte and his group could still find ways to re-enter from the ground, after all, The three of them were extremely powerful and it was not difficult to blast a big hole, but after a few times, they could not tell where the fresh traces were. Charlotte was getting more and more worried about Gareth's changes. To be honest, even the real Blood clan would not allow the Blood Servant to be stronger than themselves, and would deliberately limit the Blood Servant's strength, but Gareth's strength was obviously growing rapidly. There were too many spirit demons left by the ancient Maduro tree, and the vitality of these spirit demons was too surging. The vitality of a spirit demon was enough to match that of more than a dozen ordinary people. Gareth's unscrupulous killing, coupled with the fact that he was a strong saint of the 22nd level, made Solomon Island a natural hunting ground for him. Charlotte had always been worried. Without a blood core, his control over the Blood Servant was weak. When Gareth's strength far exceeded his, he could hardly sense this big boy. Charlotte also did not find any traces of the fangs of the sea serpent Vasuji. When the passage in front collapsed again, several people drilled out of the ground. Charlotte said, "I'm afraid we can only wait for Gareth to come back." Andreas and Agar nodded. It was already very late at this time. Charlotte decided to go back to the ship first, rest for a night, and then come back to explore. The three of them identified the direction and started the return journey. They had not walked far when it was completely dark. Charlotte still released the flaming hand to illuminate the road ahead. Agon and Andreas followed behind, guarding him with great vigilance. Suddenly, Charlotte felt something swimming in the dark. He took out a withered rose and raised his hand to shoot. The sound of gunfire traveled far in the darkness, but Charlotte could sense that someone had deflected his bullet. He raised his eyebrows slightly and shouted in a low voice, "Come out." 3 men and 1 woman, 4 black phoenix people came out of the darkness, their faces full of vigilance. Andreas whispered, "For my sake, can you not fight?" Charlotte nodded and said, "As long as they are not prepared to fight, I have no problem." Andreas then said, "Frandy, can we not fight?" "I don't want to fight you." A middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s seemed to be relieved and said, "If I am not forced, I don't want to fight you. We are searching for supplies on the island. When we set out, although we brought some supplies, we did not have enough food and water." Charlotte was going for adventure, so she brought a full range of food and water, but the nobles of the Black Phoenix dynasty were going to move. Most of the space on their ship was filled with wealth, and only a small part was food and water. Therefore, Charlotte and his men have not encountered the problem of shortage of supplies, but the last fleet of the Black Phoenix has encountered it. Charlotte did not allow anyone to go to the island, but Georgiade Hadrian did not issue the ban. He only told his men not to be discovered by Charlotte's people and not to spy on Charlotte's fleet. The Black Phoenix people did not expect that they would meet Andreas and his men halfway by chance. Among the 4 Black Phoenix people, only one was a saint, the man Andreas called Flandy. The remaining 3 young people were his 2 sons and a daughter. Although they were also extraordinary, if a conflict broke out, Andreas could kill them all by himself. Andreas talked to them for a few words and told Ferlander and his men about a water source they found halfway. As for food, well, for vampires, this island may be full of food. But for ordinary people, these may not be swallowed. Charlotte couldn't help but ask in the Black Phoenix language, "Have you found anything similar to a building?" Although Charlotte was extremely famous, the only way to convey someone's image in this world was through portraits and unreliable word of mouth. He had never seen these Black Phoenix nobles, so naturally they couldn't recognize him. Flandy was quite friendly and said, "We actually saw a building. There was a Sherlockian castle at the place where we landed." Georgiade Hadrian took people to search and found a batch of treasures, but they were not worth much. Charlotte had not searched yet because of Georgiade Hadrian's appearance. She approached the direction of the Black Phoenix fleet. When she heard this, her eyes tightened slightly and she asked curiously, "What did you find?" Flandy said, "Some decorations from the Sherlock era, some weapons, and hundreds of ancient Sherlock gold coins, that's all." Charlotte was just slightly relieved. It sounded like he had no target, and then she heard Flandy say, "The only special thing is a strange giant beast tooth. It is as long as 2 or 3 people and thicker than 2 people hugging it. No one knows where it came from." Charlotte's eyes tightened slightly. He was 60% sure that it was the tooth of the sea serpent Vasuji, and it was also the last target of his trip. It would be too difficult to get this thing back if it fell into Georgiade Hadrian's hands. Although Charlotte was not afraid of Georgiade Hadrian, after all, Juno Arthur was also accompanying him in his fleet, but whether it was worthwhile to launch a sea battle for the tooth of the sea serpent Vasuji was very debatable. Last time, in the battle in the Black Phoenix City, 7 of his saints died. Whenever Charlotte thought of it, he still felt distressed. He didn't want another saint battle to happen, and a few more saints died, as they were all his future team. Although without the tooth of the sea serpent Vasuji, the Holy Light Kingdom was missing this extraordinary artifact and could not be repaired. But it was not unacceptable that this legendary warship could not be repaired. At this time, Charlotte suddenly thought of the old leopard man Domitian, and thought to herself, if he were here, with his superb Beast Scout transformation technique, he could disguise himself as anyone, or he could steal the tooth of the sea serpent Vasuji. Of course, it was just a thought now. Domitian was still in the old world, following Menelman, and it was impossible for him to suddenly appear in front of him. The two sides exchanged friendly words for a while and then separated. The young girl exhaled long, breathed, and then said a little worriedly, "Fortunately Andreas didn't want to kill us." Her two brothers said somewhat dissatisfiedly, "Father may not be afraid of Andreas. The 3 of us may not be afraid of the 2 people on the other side." Frandy stopped his children's argument and said, "Let's go. Let's go back to the boat." He didn't want to encounter the holy steps of Fars again. The island was becoming more and more weird. After nightfall, the danger factor increased dramatically. He was not afraid, but he was worried about his children and decided to conceal the matter. After all, the identities of both parties were too sensitive now. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 466 The Last Princess of the Ancient Sherlock Kingdom. Charlotte returned to the database and went to see Juno first. Juno listened to Charlotte's description of Drusinia's performance, but did not make any response. He just said that he knew, but his face looked a little ugly. Charlotte then summoned all her subordinates and told them about their experiences on the island. Concealing information is a very stupid thing, so Charlotte did not hide anything, so as to prevent these loyal subordinates from being in danger because they did not understand the situation on the island. Cresto, Asperus, Rolf, Chodero, Vigo and other 5 saints, some of them had already noticed the appearance of Georgiette Hadrian, but some of them did not notice it at all, such as Vigo. Hearing that the island was so strange and turbulent, they were all very surprised and talked about it. Kratos said, "We have Mr. Juno and the database, so we should not be afraid of Georgiette Hadrian. But there is no need for us to conflict with them. After all, the Black Phoenix has been destroyed. I suggest finding an opportunity to negotiate with them." Ralph snorted coldly and said, "I have already deviated from the course, and Georgiette Hadrian is still chasing us. It is clear that he wants to fight to the death with us. I am not optimistic about the negotiation. It is even possible that Georgiette Hadrian will play some tricks during the negotiation, pretending to agree to us first, and then suddenly attack." Charlotte felt that what Kratos said made sense, and that what the Golden Goat Rolf said made sense. If they could avoid a desperate duel with the last fleet of the Black Phoenix, it would be the best, but he was not very sure about Georgiette Hadrian's attitude. After all, the two sides had a blood feud and the hatred of destroying their countries, and there was no basis for peace at all. During the negotiation, Georgiette Hadrian was indeed likely to play some tricks, such as detaining the negotiators or ambushing them. In fact, if it were Charlotte, she would probably do the same. Several saints argued endlessly, but the overall atmosphere was quite harmonious. After all, no one wanted to fight, and no one believed in Georgiette Hadrian. Charlotte pondered for a while, knocked on the table, and said, "We can't get an answer if we continue to argue. However, we should remain vigilant for the time being. We don't need to contact Georgiette Hadrian or explore Solomon Island. The tooth of the sea serpent Vasuji that Charlotte wanted was already in the hands of Georgiette Hadrian, so he really didn't need to explore Solomon Island. But he didn't want to give up just like that, so he wanted to wait." Kratos suddenly said, "Since we don't plan to continue exploring Solomon Island, should we give Georgiette Hadrian a notice to express our goodwill that we will not land on the island before they leave?" Charlotte nodded and said, "Okay, although this shallow goodwill is likely to be useless, Georgiette Hadrian may play along and return the goodwill, and then suddenly plot against him. However, he also reminded, let my maze guards go and deliver the letter, don't let ordinary people go, Kratos originally wanted to let his capable men communicate, but after hearing Charlotte's words, although he felt that he was a little too worried, he also agreed with his opinion. Charlotte announced the adjournment of the meeting, and he also returned to his room. Charlotte was not used to being served, so he always lived alone. Without a maid to serve him, he took off his clothes and lay in the bathtub in the room, looking at the straight outside the magic alchemy crystal glass. After a while, he squinted his eyes and enjoyed the comfort of soaking in hot water. After soaking for half an hour, Charlotte began to wash himself. When he was almost done, he walked out of the bathtub, changed into a new set of clothes, and suddenly became excited. Just as Charlotte was about to do his daily practice, he heard someone knocking on the door. He opened the door, but didn't see anyone. He was alert and attacked the blind spot of his vision with blood rose. He didn't see any shadows, but if there were enemies, they would definitely be in the blind spot of his vision. This was his battle experience. Just as Charlotte was about to shout for help, he heard a chuckle and a woman's voice sounded softly. "I am Doria." Charlotte was relieved to hear that it was another night-use blood servant of the teacher. He stabbed with a sword, but was still a little alert. After all, Drusinia's performance made him distrust the blood servants around Juno. Doria fell lightly and hit above Charlotte's head. Charlotte's sword just now was still stabbed in the wrong direction. Doria is a typical blonde girl, very young. Her words and actions are full of youthfulness. She has a ponytail and her long golden hair sways from side to side, making her look very playful and cute. But Charlotte knew that the other party was definitely not a young girl, and asked cautiously, "Miss Doria, what do you want to talk to me about?" Doria said, "Master Juno, let me tell you something. Drusinia is the last princess of the ancient Sherlock kingdom. Master also used the Dreamland to cover the entire Solomon Island. After a preliminary investigation, he is sure that this is a secret base of the Sherlock dynasty. Drusinia may want to find something from the Sherlock dynasty." Charlotte was slightly surprised and said, "What can be here?" Doria smiled slightly and said, 7 of the first 12 legendary battleships were built by the Sherlock dynasty. But there are only 5 left of the second large version of the legendary battleship, and 2 have disappeared. If it weren't for the kingdom of St. Michael finding the Queen Bee, it should have been one of the missing ones. Charlotte shouted, "Are there 2 ancient magic battleships hidden here?" Doria shook her head and said, "I don't know, and Master Juno doesn't know either." Charlotte nodded to show that she understood. Doria said these few words and did not stay for long before floating away. Just as Charlotte was about to go back to her room, she heard someone calling her in a low voice. Charlotte was slightly terrified when she saw Andreas. He said unhappily, "Why are you yelling?" Andreas chuckled and said, "I think the people of the Blue Sky tribe should be quite depressed, and they have no food. Should we go and see them?" Charlotte thought to herself, "You want to see those blue goblins that can change, right?" Although the appearance of the blue giants changes is very consistent with the aesthetics of the Earthlings, because many of the templates are provided by Charlotte herself, and there are even classic beauties on the internet, Charlotte is really not interested. He said, "I want to rest now. I can release the Holy Light God Kingdom. You can go and comfort those blue ladies yourself," Andreas whispered, "after they change into humans. They are no longer blue." Chapter 467, Charlotte Mecklen, "I can't stand it anymore, I'm about to be corrupted." Charlotte really released the Holy Light Kingdom quietly. This time he did not use such a rough method as throwing, but put it on the water surface, so that this legendary warship appeared quietly without making a big noise. Charlotte originally thought that Andreas was the only one, but she did not expect that at least more than 100 people came out from the 8 warships. Charlotte shook his head. This time he really went to practice and was ready to rest. The next morning, when Charlotte woke up, he felt that the atmosphere was not right. The Dalmabadis was a little too quiet. He got up, put on his clothes, and went on the deck. Sure enough, he saw that the Holy Light Kingdom was very lively. Not only Andreas, at least more than half of the officers of the fleet were on the Holy Light Kingdom. Charlotte did not expect that things would change like this. He shrugged his shoulders, called a maze guard, and asked him to cross Solomon Island to deliver documents to Georgia D. Hadrian. He returned to the room, ordered breakfast, and after breakfast, he began a new day of practice. Charlotte is currently at the 18th level, which is already the pinnacle of high-level transcendence. He is only half a step away from the holy level. He wants to break through as soon as possible, so he has been practicing more diligently during this period. At noon, the maze guard was sent back, leaving only a huge beast head, and the lower body did not return. The Black Phoenix man who came to deliver the letter, although his legs were shaking, always held his head high, with a face ready to die. Charlotte did not embarrass him and let the messenger go. Georgiade Hadrian's attitude is very clear, that is, the two sides will inevitably have a war, and there is no room for maneuver. Charlotte really doesn't want to start a war, but Georgiade Hadrian's fighting spirit is so clear that he can only think about how to win this battle. Charlotte knows that both sides have their own advantages. His advantages are the Holy Light God country, Dalma base, and Juno. Georgiade Hadrian's advantages are himself, 15 magic alchemy warships, and the number of holy levels far more than Charlotte. Georgiade Hadrian originally had dozens of saints under his command, and gradually received many Black Phoenix nobles to surrender. Now there are more than 70 saints alone, gathering the last foundation of Black Phoenix. Of course, he did not bring all the saints here. There were only 40 or 50 saints who followed him to Solomon Island, which was stronger than Charlotte's side. After letting the messenger go, Charlotte immediately worried about her subordinates and held a meeting. Being pulled from the Holy Light God Kingdom, many people were not very focused, especially Andreas and Rolf, who were obviously in a state of being obsessed with education. Even Charlotte did not respond to several questions. Charlotte was also helpless and could only remind everyone that Georgiade Hadrian killed his messenger and might launch an attack at any time, and was ready to take back the Holy Light God Kingdom to prevent anyone from losing their ambition. This meeting did not discuss anything. After the meeting, Charlotte asked people to call down everyone on the Holy Light God Kingdom to prepare to take back this legendary battleship. When all the fleet officers disembarked from the Holy Light Kingdom, Charlotte suddenly felt the sun in his arms warm up slightly. He took out his diary, and the diary automatically turned to the Saint Light Kingdom voyage log, with lines of handwriting displayed. Father, you planted Depakaloato on Mother, and now he is going crazy. Please be sure to drive Depakaloato away. He has begun to reproduce those evil descendants. If you don't drive him away, the kingdom of Holy Light God will be full of Lingmo and Great Lingmo. Charlotte was slightly stunned and asked, are those blue giants called Great Lingmo? Amun didn't seem to expect that Charlotte would ask this question. He was obviously a little hesitant, and then he revealed a line of handwriting. Yes. Those with complete tolerance are Great Lingmo. Charlotte didn't expect that Amun seemed to know Depakaloato very well, and asked with great interest, what is the origin of this ancient tree? What is the difference between Lingmo and Great Lingmo? Amun was silent for a while, and then he replied patiently, Depakaloato is the only ancient Maduro tree. There is only one ancient Maduro tree in the world. The rest of the ancient Maduro trees are his incarnations, which are actually himself. He wanted to become the mother goddess of reproduction, but there was already one in this world. Of course, he could not become a god, and he failed miserably in the end. He is a failed evil god. Lingmo is a prop he created to accommodate the consciousness of other creatures. Although Lingmo can accommodate the will of other creatures and change into their appearance, it has great defects. Its lifespan is very short, only a few decades, and its power is also limited, and it can only reach the second or third level of extraordinary. The Great Lingmo is the perfect product created by Depakaloato. They can perfectly accommodate the consciousness of other creatures and have a very long lifespan. The group of people you brought back are the old people of the ancient Sherlock dynasty. They lost some of their memories during the transfer process and no longer remember their origins. Amun rambled on, telling a lot of surprising secrets. Although Charlotte did not dare to believe Amun 100%, she still felt that what this child said might be 3 or 4 points true, and Depakaloato was indeed very evil. As for the Lingmo and the Great Lingmo, he was also very curious after hearing Amun's explanation, and secretly thought, if Lingmo has this function, I can collect a batch of them. If my soldiers are seriously injured and cannot be treated, or become disabled, affecting their lives, or dying, they can be transferred to Lingmo or the Great Lingmo, allowing them to survive in another form. Although according to Amun's meaning, this kind of memory transfer must have great flaws. Those blue giants don't remember their identities and origins at all, and have no idea that they were once ancient Sherlocks. But for those who are seriously injured and cannot be treated or are about to die, it is still a very good choice. As for whether they are still the same person after the transfer, this matter is not important. Charlotte will not allow those who are difficult to treat, disabled, or dying to make a choice. If they choose to keep their original appearance, Charlotte will only respect their choice. Charlotte was communicating with Amun when a thought exploded in her brain. Charlotte Mecklen. Charlotte Mecklen. Charlotte Mecklen, get that bitch away. I don't want to be in the same boat with this bitch. She's even taking root in my body and breeding her disgusting offspring. I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to be corrupted. Chapter 468, Chase at Sea. Charlotte opened her hand and took back the Holy Light God Kingdom. He had no way to solve this problem. The Holy Light God Kingdom needed the paper from the ancient Maduro tree. He had already got the ancient Maduro tree. Could he fold a few paper strips and then throw the tree away? Although this thing was weird, its value was inestimable. When the golden ring returned to his finger, all thoughts disappeared, and even the sail log of the Holy Light God Kingdom was silent. Charlotte took back the Holy Light God Kingdom, which disappointed many people, but these people could understand it. After all, with a powerful enemy at hand, it was not appropriate to continue to be extravagant and debauched, and they all blamed Georgia D. Hadrian for their hatred. Seeing Charlotte take back the Holy Light God Kingdom, Kratos walked to him and whispered, "I suggest leaving Solomon Island." Charlotte was slightly surprised. He was indeed still thinking about the tooth of the sea serpent Vasugi, but this extraordinary object fell into the hands of Georgia D. Hadrian, and he definitely couldn't get it back. Then, after reading Vasugi's tooth, it would be meaningless to stay in Solomon Island. Kratos continued, "Although our fleet is powerful, this island is too strange. If we continue to stay, we will be in danger sooner or later. What's more, we are anchored in the canyon with only one exit. If Georgia D. Hadrian leads the warships to block the exit, we will be trapped to death." Charlotte was shocked and suddenly reacted. This canyon is a natural harbor, but the fleet hiding in it is too easy to be caught. Georgia D. Hadrian has far more magic alchemy warships than them, and he is really capable of blocking the exit of the strait. Thinking of this, Charlotte no longer cared about the teeth of Vasugi, the sea color, or Solomon Island. As for Drusinia, who is still staying in Solomon, and her good son Gareth, who had not yet returned, they were not within his consideration. He shouted loudly, "Set sail, let's leave this canyon." Charlotte gave the order, and first the 7 magic alchemy warships sailed out of the port one by one, and then the Dalmabase. When the fleet just sailed out of the canyon, a fleet on the sea rode the wind and waves and rushed over. Charlotte felt a chill on her back. If it weren't for the reminder of Kratos, the former Grand Master of the Royal Knights, who was old and experienced, his fleet would definitely be blocked in the canyon by Georgia D. Hadrian, and then he could only fight bloody battles, and no tactics could be used. Georgia D. Hadrian had just personally scouted Charlotte's fleet, and after returning, he made a plan. This time, after killing Charlotte's messenger, he immediately commanded the fleet to come over, but he didn't expect that Charlotte would react and rush out of the port first. Georgia D. Hadrian did not hesitate and ordered all the warships to open fire. Charlotte had no intention of engaging in battle at all, and ordered the fleet to gallop at full speed and head towards the Agar Sea. Both sides were magic alchemy warships, and their speeds were not much different, because after all, they were all products of the Black Phoenix. Even the batch of warships in the Black Phoenix city were the latest ones, and the quality was slightly better. As soon as the two fleets left Solomon Island shook violently, and a black wave gushed out from the island. This wave became more and more fierce and chased the two fleets. Seeing this, Charlotte was shocked and ordered the 8 warships under her command to go all out. Georgia D. Hadrian did not dare to stop at all, and also ordered the warships to sail at full speed. After the black wave surged, Solomon Island shook slightly and sank to the bottom of the sea. Charlotte witnessed this scene on the highest ship of Dalmabase, and her heart was slightly chilled, because neither the surging black wave nor the disappearing Solomon Island was a natural event. Although he didn't know what happened on Solomon Island, there must be a very powerful force that was angered. After all, Charlotte and Georgia D. Hadrian's fleet was 3 times faster than ordinary ships, so the black wave surging from Solomon Island did not catch up with them. At the closest time, it was only within a few kilometers. Everyone in the two fleets could clearly see that the black wave was densely packed with wronged souls, skeletons, white floating corpses, and even a large number of dead marine creatures. When the two fleets accelerated and moved further and further away from the black wave, everyone on the two fleets couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Originally, everyone explored Solomon Island. Although the situation was strange, after all, there were many extraordinary people and the Holy Order was in charge, so they were not afraid of various monsters. But the black wave that chased them in the end was completely different from the monsters they encountered. Even Georgiady Hadrian could sense that the black waves gushing out from Solomon Island were completely different from the creatures on the island. After the two fleets had been sailing for most of the day, they both intentionally distanced themselves from each other. Georgiady Hadrian urged the fleet to hurry up and escape the mysterious black wave. The 15 magic alchemy warships he was in charge of were in great need of maintenance. The people on the ship were still in shock and needed some time to recover their combat effectiveness. Charlotte didn't want to fight at all. He just wanted to go to the Agar's Sea and solve his crisis. In the seabed that neither Charlotte nor Georgiady Hadrian knew, hundreds of thousands of Lingmo formed a marching team stretching for dozens of kilometers, marching slowly but steadily. They were not afraid of the seawater and could still move freely even on the seabed. If the two knew, they would kill all the Lingmo. Charlotte finally lost sight of Georgiady Hadrian's fleet. Knowing that she had temporarily lost the pursuit, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said, "We have gotten rid of Georgiady Hadrian's fleet. Now let's go at full speed and enter the Agar's Sea as soon as possible." Georgiady Hadrian was in his captain's room, looking at the huge tooth in front of him. After all, he was a peak saint, and he had long sensed that there was a surging power in this huge tooth. He didn't know that this was the tooth of the sea serpent Vasuji, and was thinking about how to make it into an extraordinary weapon. At this time, a red-haired beauty secretly grabbed a magic alchemy warship of the Black Phoenix. Drusilla didn't expect that the Solomon Islands would suddenly sink, so she could only leave in a hurry. She failed to catch up with Charlotte's fleet, but caught up with Georgiady Hadrian's fleet. Just as she emerged, Gareth also emerged from the water. He looked at Drusilla coldly, and did not continue to attack. Instead, he turned over and got on the boat. After the saint got on the boat, his appearance changed. He punched a passing Black Phoenix sailor to death, stripped him naked, quickly took off his clothes and changed into his own, and threw the old clothes and the unlucky guy into the sea. This set of things was so skillful that Drusilla was a little dazed. Chapter 469, Visiting the Sea of Agalus. Drusilla followed suit and killed the Black Phoenix man, but she only changed her coat, not everything like Gareth did. She also didn't know the beast transformation technique, so she could only smear a handful of sea mud on her face. Gareth had long since restrained his breath and disappeared without a trace. Drusilla found an empty cabin and carefully took out a crystal bottle. She looked at the turbulent sea water in the crystal bottle and the elegant, swan-like boat, and smiled confidently. She suddenly sensed that someone pushed open the door of the cabin, quickly put away the crystal bottle, and pulled out the blood demon, but saw a man and a woman hugging each other and turning in. Drusilla secretly said that it was bad luck, and her body suddenly jumped up, and her hands cut the sides of the two people's necks. The young man and woman fell to the ground without a word. Facing the sneak attack of a saint-level expert like Drusilla, the young couple had no power to resist at all, and they didn't even see who attacked. After dealing with the two, Drusilla took a look at the young lady's clothes and compared them with the ones she had just snatched from her body. The princess of the ancient Sherlock dynasty, who was born to be clean, stripped the young lady naked without hesitation and put on her clothes. Then she pushed the door open and went out. Feeling the sea breeze, she felt refreshed. "Do you want to go back to Juno? As long as I don't get close to Juno for 20 kilometers, he can't control me. I have the blood demon in my hand and a swan leg. If I go directly to the New World, I can definitely make a career, and maybe even restore the glory of the Sherlock dynasty." Drusilla knew that Charlotte was not going to the New World, but only to the Agal's Sea to look for Agmilis. She would soon return to the Old World, and Juno Arthur would not go to the New World to look for her. This is why she got on Georgiady Hadrian's fleet. Gareth is also a blood servant. Does he also want to get rid of Charlotte, or can we cooperate? I am alone and powerless. If I can win over such a high-level blood butcher, I will definitely be able to gain a foothold in the New World more quickly. Drusilla made up her mind and quietly circled the ship. Although Gareth had he was not a Black Phoenix after all. As a farce person, his words and deeds must have many flaws. He must be alone and would not hang out with others. The beautiful red-haired princess soon found Gareth curled up at the stern. Gareth changed his appearance again. It was obvious that he had practiced a beast god transformation technique well. Drusilla raised her beautiful eyebrows and said, "Maybe we can talk." Gareth did not respond, and even said nothing. He just hugged his knees and buried his head in his knees, as if he was upset about something. Drusilla smiled gently and said, "We are in the same situation. We were both turned into blood slaves by others and have to be controlled by others. I don't want to continue living like this. After all, a canary in a cage can never fly high. What's more, you are not a canary, you are just a thug. I believe you are as unwilling as I am. As long as we are more than 200 kilometers away from our master, they can control us, you know, and I know that they will only stay in the Agar Sea for a while, and then they will return home and will not go to the New World. This also means that as long as we hide on Georgiady Hadrian's ship, after arriving in the New World, we can jump in the vast sea and fly in the sky. From then on, we will be free and no longer have to be bound by others. You are a saint, and I am also a saint. We can survive in the New World. It is not even difficult to raise a force. There is plenty of land over there, and it has not yet formed a country. With the strength of the two of us, it may not be impossible to establish a country. Seeing Gareth remained indifferent, Drusilla gritted her teeth and said, even if I can become the queen, you can become the prime minister of the empire and a powerful duke. Gareth said slowly, I am a powerful nobleman, Mossert is a duke, and he is not a waste like Ferdinand and Joseph. He is always a real duke with real power, and he is so powerful that he can even launch a coup. As his younger brother, although Gareth cannot inherit the duke's position, he is also a powerful viscount. The territory is quite rich and has its own knights. Charlotte did not hide this and still let Gareth inherit her title, wealth, land and knights. No, the knights are gone and have been incorporated into the Knights of Favonius. Gareth knows his noble identity, but he doesn't know that he should be Viscount Gareth Mossert. He thinks he is Viscount Gareth Mecklen. Well, Charlotte also specifically asked Antonio to help change Gareth's surname to make the procedure impeccable. Drusilla was immediately furious, because Juno had also told her about this little detail, and had also laughed at Charlotte for being so cunning that she even took advantage of Gareth. She didn't want to talk to Gareth anymore, so she turned around and left, thinking bitterly, I must kill this guy when I get a chance. Charlotte didn't know that Drusilla and Gareth had caught up with him, and occasionally felt sorry for losing these two people, and apologized to Juno. Juno didn't care, and persuaded him. Blood servants sometimes get a little angry. You don't have to care too much. Charlotte's fleet has resumed the correct course. According to Charlotte's calculations, it should be just right to reach the Agulhas Sea before the deadline. He didn't make any more trouble. Although he encountered Georgiady Hadrian's fleet several times on the way, he directly passed by without any conflict. Georgiady Hadrian brought 15 magic alchemical warships to pursue him, but ordinary warships, merchant ships, private cruise ships, transport ships, etc., all still followed a normal route. Although Georgiady Hadrian tried hard to pursue, on the one hand, the speed of the two sides was almost the same, and on the other hand, Charlotte had a veteran pirate like the Golden Goat Rolf to lead the way. The talents under Georgiady Hadrian were dwarfed by this one of the top 10 pirates, so he never caught up. 2 days before the deadline, Charlotte was looking out at the bow, and the diary in his arms suddenly felt slightly hot. He took it out and turned to the Agmaris Labyrinth. After the title page, there was only one sentence, Charlotte Mecklen has arrived at the Agmaris Sea and is about to enter the Agmaris Labyrinth. The Agmaris Sea is vast and there are countless islands. Charlotte doesn't know where the real Agmaris Labyrinth is. However, he also had his own way. After years of immersion in the maze magic, he also mastered a little bit of the evil god power of Agmaris. When a group of seabirds flew over the sky, Charlotte stretched out his hand and pressed, and all the seabirds fell down involuntarily. He injected a little bit of the maze power into each seabird, and then let them fly away. Chapter 470, Challenging the Evil God. The Agar Sea is very beautiful. It is blue like a huge sapphire, with countless islands dotted on it. Whether you look at it from a high altitude or stand on the ship, you can see the scenery. Every crew member who goes from the old world to the new world will breathe a sigh of relief when the ship arrives at the Agar Sea, because this means that the new world is not far away, and they can stop temporarily, replenish water, and rest for a while. Well, the crew members who go back to the old world from the new world will also rest here and recover from fatigue, but their mood is very different, because the arrival of the new world ship in the Agar Sea means that the journey ahead is longer and there is a more difficult journey. Although the Agar Sea is beautiful, it is not safe. 3 of the 36 great evil gods of the new world live here. In addition to Agmilis, there are 3 more. The reputation and cruelty of the other 2 are not inferior to Agmilis at all. Although there are tens of thousands of islands in the Agar Sea, because it is so dangerous, only 20 to 30 islands have human life, and only two routes are safe. One is the Christopher route and the other is the Ferdinand route. The former is the route opened by Christopher, the great navigator who discovered the New World, when he first went to the New World. The latter is the first navigator to go to the New World and return to the Old World. When he returned to the Old World, he opened up the second route. The islands inhabited by humans are all on these two routes. Charlotte released the seabirds and immediately cut off contact with them. Without the evil power of the master, they would only look for the source of the evil power. In the Agar Sea, the only source these birds can find is Agmaris. He looked at the seabirds in the sky, flapping their wings and flying in the direction, and ordered the fleet to sail into the Agar Sea. The direction they began to move forward was still the Christopher route, but soon the seabirds deviated from this route. Charlotte did not hesitate and ordered the fleet to keep up. After deviating from the route, the atmosphere of the fleet was a little tense. This expedition was only for Charlotte's personal purpose, not for wealth or honor. If it weren't for his amazing control over this fleet, any other fleet might have accumulated countless internal conflicts and would explode at any time. The second day after entering the Sea of Aglers, fog rose on the sea. Charlotte also lost the group of seabirds, but he used the same method to catch a second group of seabirds to lead the way, and he was sure that the direction of the fleet was correct. Charlotte was a little anxious. If he couldn't find the real Agmaris labyrinth, he would be forced to go to the evil God arena, which would definitely be more dangerous than challenging Agmaris. He might even be sent alone, without the help of the power of the 9 saints. A fleet composed of a legendary battleship and 7 magic alchemy battleships was a force that could swing the balance of victory even in the 2 major naval battles fought by the 4 empires in the Sea of Giant Whales. The fleet heading to the New World has never been so powerful. After all, most of the magic alchemy warships are controlled by the 5 major empires. Even among the legendary pirates, few people have such a powerful force. Well, except for the old goat. If Charlotte loses the support of this fleet, the chances of surviving this crisis will be greatly reduced. Sailing in the fog requires a lot of experience. In order to ensure the safety of the fleet, Charlotte asked the huge Dalmabatas to retreat, and the magic alchemy warship that the Golden Goat Rolf only knew how to navigate was in front to explore the way. When the sky gradually turned into night, the visibility had dropped to an extremely bad level. Charlotte had to order the fleet to slow down to avoid hitting the reef. He also arranged duty shifts for dozens of extraordinary people with exploration abilities to ensure the safety of the voyage. Charlotte turned over and over in his room, unable to sleep at all. He took out his diary and read Agmaris Labyrinth, Vampire Secret Scroll and Saint Light Kingdom Navigation Log over and over again, but he didn't find any details that he hadn't discovered before. When the sky was dim and slightly bright, Charlotte simply put on his clothes and went to the terrace of the Emperor's suite. He couldn't help but whispered, "Since I traveled through time, I have experienced countless adventures that I never dared to imagine before, but if I can choose, I really hope to spend the rest of my life with Anne in an ordinary way." Charlotte silently prayed to the Serpent of Fate, swimming in the long river of time, knowing all mysteries, mastering extraordinary rituals, the master of the Court of Fate. "Can you give me some directions? I haven't been able to please you for a long time, but if I can go back, I will build a temple of the Serpent of Fate for you in every city in Mecklenburg." He prayed silently for a while, but did not sense the response of the Serpent of Fate. He thought that the power of the Serpent of Fate could not reach the Sea of Aglers. He was slightly disappointed and looked up at the sky. Then he saw an incredible scene. Countless clouds flowed in the sky, like a silver snake tail, gently drooping down, and the fog blocking the front of the fleet was absorbed by a mysterious force. Ahead, there was a vast expanse of blue, and a large island could be seen. The entire island was built into a palace, magnificent and magnificent. At the same time, a thought came out. Charlotte Mecklen had arrived at the real Agmaris labyrinth and was about to challenge the evil god. There were a total of 99 Agmaris, and the first labyrinth in front was the Golden Goat Palace. Charlotte looked carefully for a while and couldn't help shouting, "Isn't this St. Michael's Island? How could it be the first labyrinth?" Charlotte jumped down from the terrace, and after a few leaps, she reached the conference room and sent out a magic communication to ask all the holy orders to come to the meeting. In just over 10 minutes, all the holy orders appeared on the Dalmabatas, and the Golden Goat Rolf had a strange look on his face, full of doubts. Charlotte said, "We have arrived at the real Agmaris labyrinth, and in front of us is the first maze, the Golden Goat Palace. As long as we complete this challenge to the evil god, we can go back to the Duchy of Mecklen and enjoy lasting peace, Now, who'll go with me to explore this maze? The old goat spoke first and said, I will accompany you. Andreas said, I am willing to do so too. Charlotte nodded and said, the two of you are enough, since there are a total of 99 Agneris labyrinths. The first Golden Goat Palace would not be too dangerous, and there would be no need for so many people. Besides, if there is real danger, Juno can take action at any time. Chapter 471 The First Maze, the Golden Goat Palace. Charlotte did not let the fleet approach, but only lowered a small boat, took the Golden Goat Herolf and Andreas, and 8 sailors on the small boat, and rowed towards the Golden Goat Palace. Not long after rowing, Charlotte disliked the slow human rowing, walked to the stern, pressed her palms into the sea, and urged the star battle spirit. The small boat suddenly shot up, riding the wind and waves, and in just over 2 hours, it was close to the maze in the sea. It must be said that although it looks like it is close at hand, the fleet is actually quite far away from the Golden Goat Palace. Whether it is Charlotte or the Golden Goat Herolf, the more they look at this Golden Goat Palace, the more it looks like St. Michael's Island, but when they get closer, they find that this Golden Goat Palace is very lively, with thousands of believers in white robes kneeling and praying, reciting scriptures to their gods. The Golden Goat Herolf pointed to a statue on the largest square of the Golden Goat Palace and said, there is no statue of this evil god on St. Michael Island. Charlotte nodded. He recognized the statue and even looked directly at the statue itself. It was red all over, holding a huge hammer, like a monster without skin. He was the evil god of the labyrinth of the Agar Sea, Agmeris. The Golden Goat Palace was full of his statues, and the thousands of believers were sincere. Except that there shouldn't be so many humans here, there was no flaw. Andreas asked, what should we do? Ask them how to challenge Agmeris. Andreas also thought this idea was unreliable, but he didn't know how to follow the formal process to challenge the evil god. There might be few people in this world who know this kind of trivia. A thought came out of the diary in Charlotte's arms. If you get the recognition of the believers of the Golden Goat Palace and replace Agneris in the hearts of the believers, you can complete the challenge of the first palace. These believers are demons from Solomon Island. They stole the memories of travelers passing by the Agneris Sea. They are fanatics of Agmeris. Their faith is firm and unshakable. Charlotte connected the two reminders together, and immediately slapped her thigh. She suddenly realized and said, I know how to pass through the Golden Goat Palace. These believers are not human, but demons from Solomon Island. As long as they are killed, you can pass this maze. The belief of this group of demons in Agmeris is unshakable. Replace Agmeris in the hearts of believers. Maybe for people in this world, these two things are completely contradictory, and it is impossible to complete such a weird problem. But for Earthlings, isn't this just a brain teaser? A 3-year-old child can do it. Demons are believers, but believers don't have to be demons. Since the faith is unshakable, killing all the believers and replacing them with another group of believers would be a perfect solution to the problem. Andreas was surprised and said, are you sure? But the Golden Goat Herolf flew into the air and said, we'll know after killing a few. He pointed his finger and sent out 2 streams of fighting spirit, piercing the chests of the 2 believers. How could the 2 believers resist the old goat, who was a strong saint? He died on the spot, and his body gradually changed after death, becoming taller and revealing an ugly face with 1 eye, 1 finger and 1 toe. Andreas had nothing to say. So he drew out the rapier in his hand and said, it's really a hard job for the 2 of us to kill so many Lingmo. Charlotte took out a red and blue rattlesnake, threw it to the 2, and said, use this. It will be much more efficient. The Golden Goat Herolf and Andreas were not polite, and each took an alchemical pistol and shot at the group of Lingmo. As a high-level supernatural weapon, the power of the red and blue rattlesnake is much greater than that of the withered rose. It can basically kill one with 1 shot, and the blood energy bullets converted by killing the Lingmo are enough to replenish the consumption. This group of believers were shot and killed for no reason. Dozens of them immediately panicked and ran around the island, but the Golden Goat Herolf was very familiar with St. Michael Island. No matter where these human believers transformed by Lingmo hid, he could easily find them. Soon, the Golden Goat Palace was full of blood. Charlotte stretched out his hand and pressed his forehead. Although it was a killing Lingmo, he was still not used to it. He could only silently say in his heart, you should not appear in this world, although destroying you is not my choice, because I have no choice, but if you are resentful, you should first resent the evil god who created and used you, and then give me some of the rest. Several Lingmos rushed towards Charlotte with resentment. The golden goats Herolf and Andreas felt that there was no danger here, so they did not protect him. Charlotte didn't take these demons seriously. The blood rose flew out and easily killed them. About an hour later, the golden goat Herolf and Andreas came back with a relaxed look on their faces and exchanged the red and blue rattlesnakes for Charlotte. Charlotte took the pair of high-level alchemical pistols and said, "Now you try to believe in me." Andreas shrugged and said, "Okay." The old goat couldn't refuse. Charlotte didn't feel different at first, but soon he sensed it. Two voices echoed in his heart. One voice was, "Charlotte actually asked me to believe in him? It's really weird. He won't become an evil god, right? I always thought that he was a good person." Another voice was, "Charlotte Mecklen, go die, go be killed by the evil god, you bastard, you shouldn't live in this world. Without you, my world is perfect. Without you, I still have the queen bee in a magic alchemical warship, and I am a great pirate on St. Michael's Island." Charlotte smiled slightly, and was about to remind the old goat to change the lines of faith, when he heard a slight rumbling sound. He raised his eyes and saw that the evil god sculptures all over the Golden Goat Palace were bursting, and under the peeling gravel skin, a new image was revealed. Not long after, the entire Golden Goat Palace was filled with statues of Charlotte Mecklen. Each statue was a different image. Some statues were in a hurry, wearing coats, some statues were holding magic alchemical canes, some statues were half-squatting, shooting with anti-space long-range rifles, and some statues were holding blood roses. Each statue represented a period of Charlotte. Since he traveled to this world, there would be a corresponding statue to match each period. This Golden Goat Palace was filled with Charlotte's statues. If these statues were arranged according to a certain mysterious rule, they would almost be all of Charlotte's experiences since she crossed over. Charlotte secretly smacked her lips and thought, there are really no secrets in front of the evil god, but this should be considered as passing through the Golden Goat Palace, right? A rune with black smoke suddenly jumped out of his eyes. This rune gave birth to countless thin lines, some of which pierced into the Golden Goat Palace, and some extended to the distance. Those were all the cities that Charlotte had ever turned into a maze. Charlotte's mind was enlightened. He finally truly mastered the power of the maze. This rune with black smoke was exactly a maze. It was also the core of Agmir's evil power. This maze rune with black smoke allowed Charlotte Mecklen to have the power to maze a city at will, and to remove the power of maze. But its power is not infinite. It needs to be accumulated before it can be released. At present, this maze rune only has the power of 6 mazes, which is equivalent to 6 pages of the Agrimmer's Labyrinth. Charlotte's heart moved slightly, and she decisively mazes the Golden Goat Palace. When the maze of the Golden Goat Palace was completed, a new route appeared, leading to the depths of the Agar Sea. Charlotte had no intention of staying in the Golden Goat Palace. She called the Golden Goats Rolf and Andreas and said, "Let's go back to the ship, continue to sail forward and complete the task of challenging the evil god this time." At this time, the Georgiadi Hadrian fleet, relying on the speed of the ship, had caught up with several waves of Black Phoenix fleets. Every time Georgiadi Hadrian passed a fleet, he would appease these followers and inquire about Charlotte's news. When he learned that Charlotte had sailed into the Agar Sea and entered the Christopher route, he hesitated slightly and then plunged into this route. He didn't know that there were 2 stowaways on the ship. During this period, Drusinia often came to see Gareth, and the two gradually developed a tacit understanding. Seeing that Drusinia almost exposed her whereabouts several times, Gareth taught her the Beast God transfiguration technique. Drusinia returned the favor and taught Gareth the blood shadow technique. This secret technique can transform the whole body into a faint blood shadow, flying into the sky and hiding in the ground, and is omnipotent. Moreover, as long as it pounces on the enemy, it can devour the opponent's essence, blood and vitality. It is an extremely vicious spell. Juno is not stingy with secret techniques, and has taught many secret techniques to his blood servants. Charlotte has not learned the blood shadow technique for the time being because she has not practiced enough. Gareth is a strong stage of the 22nd level of the Saint level, so it is not difficult for him to learn the blood shadow technique. When Drusinia mastered the Beast God transfiguration technique, Gareth also practiced a blood shadow technique. After the fleet entered the Agar Sea, Gareth suddenly stood up. He saw Georgiadi Hadrian take off into the air, leave the flagship and fly forward. Drusinia whispered, he should be exploring the way. Gareth dived into the sea without hesitation. Drusinia hesitated for a moment and followed him into the sea. She watched Gareth swim to the bottom of Georgiady Hadrian's flagship like a big fish, and then cast the blood shadow technique, sticking to the hull, and sneak into the ship. Drusilla did not follow him. She knew what kind of character Georgiady Hadrian was. Even Juno said that he had no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation. He was a real tough guy at the peak of the saint level. Even if she had the blood demon in her hand, she could only run away. She sneaked into Georgiady Hadrian's flagship. Once the last generation of military god of the Black Phoenix dynasty came back, it would be too late to run away. Wouldn't it be like catching a turtle in a jar? Drusilla was wondering what Gareth wanted to do. Then he was seen holding a huge fang and jumping back into the sea. More than 10 Black Phoenix saints followed him and jumped into the sea angrily. Drusilla didn't know that it was the fang of the sea serpent Visugi. Juno didn't tell them about it, but she also knew that Gareth had been guarding Georgiady Hadrian's fleet, not to escape, but to steal the fang. She was curious and followed him. Although Gareth was powerful, there were more than 10 saints chasing him. He could only run away desperately and had no intention of turning around to fight. Drusilla followed for half an hour and saw Gareth being caught up by 3 saints. He took out the blood demon and fired 3 shots in a row. How powerful are the extraordinary weapons of the saints! The 3 saints sensed the danger and hurriedly dispersed, giving Gareth the opportunity to escape. Drusilla fired these 3 shots, which also exposed herself, and some Black Phoenix saints came to chase her. The 2 sides fought and cruised in the vast sea of the Agar Sea for several hours. Before Georgiady Hadrian returned, the 2 of them got rid of the pursuit separately. Drusilla did not find Gareth's trace, but she knew that this guy must be chasing Charlotte and the others. Drusilla hesitated for a long time, and finally gritted her teeth, opened a mysterious talisman in her body, sensed Juno's position, and then resolutely chased after him. She did want to leave Juno, but this determination was not unbreakable. After being with Juno for so long, she also knew how gentle Juno was. Drusilla did not dare to think too much, because as long as she thought too much, she knew that her will might be shaken, but Gareth made her think too much, so she decided to chase after him and take another look at Juno. Drusilla told herself that she would just look at him and leave, and she still had to go to the new world. But she also knew how self-deception this was. Georgiady Hadrian explored the route ahead and returned to the fleet. He heard someone report that the fang of the sea snake Visugi was lost. He did not expect that Charlotte actually sent people to steal the fang. Georgiady Hadrian pondered for a long time. Although he knew that the fang must not be ordinary and could be made into a powerful extraordinary weapon, compared to going to the New World through the Agar Sea, the fang was nothing more than a small matter. Anyway, it was just an unexpected gain, so it was lost. Georgiady Hadrian said to his men, "The fang is not important. Our goal is to go to the New World and open up our own second Black Phoenix dynasty. When we have accumulated enough strength, sooner or later, we will make a comeback, kill back to the old world, and take back everything we have lost." Chapter 472, The Complete Holy Kingdom of Light. Charlotte suddenly missed the Black Dragon. This old lizard man often came up with some reliable ideas. Although his ideas were often plain and simple, and not as sophisticated and well-planned as those of the wise men in various legends, they were very practical every time. After passing the Golden Goat Palace, Charlotte sailed for a long time and did not see the second maze, and he was a little confused. He asked his teacher Juno Arthur, but this veteran strong man from Byron just smiled and said, "I believe you." He didn't give any ideas, obviously wanting to train his abilities. Well, Charlotte didn't really want to train his abilities. He just wanted to break through the shackles of the evil god as soon as possible, so that he could relax and go back to the Duchy of Mecklenburg to live a quiet life with Anne. Charlotte held 5 rounds of meetings with several of his subordinates, and the most valuable advice he got was that he hoped he would release the name of the Holy Light God. Well, there was no surprise. Andreas, the one who proposed this suggestion, strongly supported it, accounting for most of his holy ranks, including a group of middle and lower-level officers of the Knights of Favonius. Charlotte did not bring Dubin and the others, but there were still a group of old people who had been with him for a long time. These people strongly requested some amateur programs, which was not a big deal. In particular, they had deviated from the normal route and should not fight with Georgiady Hadrian. Charlotte was still a little hesitant. After he announced the adjournment of the meeting again, he boarded the highest deck of the Dalmabaus. This legendary warship was like a palace, with more than a dozen ship towers, and between these ship towers, there were more than a dozen decks of varying heights. He looked out at the sea ahead, feeling indescribably uneasy. Just as Charlotte was catching the sea breeze, trying to catch the confusion in his heart and crush it to death, suddenly a white line appeared in the sky behind him. He suddenly became energetic and shouted, "Kratos! There is an enemy attack." Charlotte's most trusted bodyguard now is the former Grand Master of the Royal Knights, the 23rd level glorious paladin. After all, Kratos is strong enough. Moreover, Kratos has been connected to the aura of the guard magic circle of the Dalma base. If he stays where he is, even if Georgia D. Hadrian comes, he may not be able to defeat this strong man from Fars in a short time. Kratos did not float in the air, and whispered, "It's Gareth." Charlotte was surprised and said, "Gareth? Why is he back again?" Charlotte always thought that Gareth, like Drusilla, took the opportunity to escape. Even if she met him again, she was afraid that he would be an enemy. She never thought that he could come back. To him, Gareth was a lost samurai, definitely not a lost golden retriever. Charlotte was cautious and said, "Be ready to protect me at any time." Kratos agreed, and he was also a little curious. Soon, Gareth fell from the sky. Before he spoke, Charlotte stared at the giant fang he was holding, and said with a smile on her face, "Come back if you want. What else do you want to bring?" He rushed over and hugged the fang of the sea snake Vasuji, comforted Gareth and said, "You have worked hard." Gareth knelt on one knee and said, "For the sake of my father's career, Gareth will die." Charlotte ordered, "Take Gareth to bathe quickly and arrange a good meal for him. After you eat, I will send 2 big demons over, or you can pick one yourself and find one that suits your eyes." Charlotte didn't even mention why Gareth ran away, whether he betrayed her, and other nonsense. Gareth could come back, so he could forget about the past. Moreover, Gareth brought back the fang of Vasuji, a sea serpent. Even if he ran away for a year or two, Charlotte felt that she could accept it. A child, going out to play a little and not wanting to go home, what's the big deal? Gareth floated away without explaining anything from beginning to end. Andreas stared at the fang and said, "Charlotte, let the Holy Light God Kingdom come out." The golden goat Rolf couldn't help but say, "Yes, yes. Let the Holy Light God Kingdom come out." Charlotte had no more excuses. She threw the golden ring in her hand far away. The Holy Light God Kingdom shook violently and floated on the sea. Then she used both hands to throw the fang of Vasuji, a sea serpent, over. The fang fell into the Holy Light God Kingdom and immediately turned into a ray of light and disappeared without a trace. In just a moment, countless thoughts poured into Charlotte's mind. "Charlotte Mecklen, get these 2 bitches out of here. Why did you bring that bitch Vasuji here? Why are there so many people in this house? Why is that bitch Dabichirato here too? Father, they are fighting." Charlotte closed her eyes, and suddenly she understood one thing. That is, the Holy Light Kingdom was originally incomplete. It was incomplete before it was damaged. This legendary warship didn't have so many bitches before. Now it's very lively. And it's super lively. Charlotte saw a touch of blue on both sides of the legendary warship. In the surging waves on the left, a giant whale was swimming. In the endless crests on the right, a strange-shaped snake was playing with the waves. The ancient Maduro tree at the bow swayed with color. Amabella, who was nailed to the bottom of the ship, opened her eyes and was shocked to find that her body was merging into the bottom of the ship. She was originally nailed to the bottom of the ship by the feathers of Saint Michael and was not one with the Holy Light Kingdom. But when Charlotte completed the following 12 incredible requirements, the fangs of the sea serpent Vasuji, the tears of the giant whale king, the branches of the ancient Maduro tree, the evil power of the god of the labyrinth, the breath of the blood ancestor, the favor of one of the 9 gods, the jealousy of the beloved, the fate of the divine creature, the blood of the peak saint, the grace of the red dragon emperor, the reward of the lionheart king, and the indifference of serving the monarch. He was completely merging into this legendary battleship. "Charlotte Mecklen, you can't do this. We had a contract, we had a child. Amen. Beg your father to stop. I'm going to be trapped on this broken ship forever. No. I'm going to become this broken ship itself." Charlotte's brain seemed to be stirred by something. He was about to take back this legendary battleship, but heard Andreas say excitedly, "You have repaired the Holy Light Kingdom. You don't have to put it away anymore. Let it be your flagship. Let us go over and help you see what changes have taken place on this ship." As soon as Andreas said this, the golden goat Herolf cheered loudly. And several saints took off into the air together. Some of Charlotte's officers, relying on their own extraordinary powers, jumped into the sea, ran on the waves, or simply swam over. Soon the Holy Light Kingdom became lively. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and did not take the legendary warship away. He felt that his bond with the Holy Light Kingdom had deepened. He could even feel every corner of the legendary warship, including places that had never been explored before. There seemed to be more blue giants on the ship. It was obvious that the ancient Maduro tree had reproduced again. He even tampered with the memories of all the great demons, making them think that there were only so many of them. Juno Arthur also came out to watch the fun. He looked at the legendary warship, smiled slightly, and said, "I remember you have a holy weapon called Blood Spirit." Charlotte nodded, and Juno said, "Why don't you try to throw the Blood Spirit in? I guarantee that this ship will be very lively." Charlotte hesitated for a moment and rejected the teacher's unreliable suggestion. The Blood Spirit was quite useful, and it might not be compatible with the Holy Light Kingdom. The Holy Light Kingdom was already so chaotic, so let's not make it more chaotic. Juno played a few jokes with Charlotte, then suddenly tilted his head slightly, laughed, and said, "My lost cat has returned home too." He pretended to pinch, and a mermaid was caught out of the sea. Drusilla struggled hard and shouted, "Let me go." Juno threw her on the deck and said lightly, "Why did you want to come back?" Drusilla shouted angrily, "I didn't want to come back, I just got lost." Juno shrugged his shoulders and said, "Then go." Drusilla turned around and jumped into the sea. Charlotte was surprised and asked, "Are you really going to let her go? Even if I let her go, you have to get your blood demon back, or, if you don't want it anymore, just give it to me." Before Juno could speak, Charlotte heard someone spit at him. Drusilla jumped out of the sea again, turned over, stood on the deck, and said, "You don't have to worry about the master's blood demon gun." Charlotte shrugged and said, "I don't lack a holy weapon for the time being." Juno snapped his fingers, and Doria appeared out of nowhere and handed Drusilla a towel. Drusilla wrapped herself up and followed Doria back to Juno's cabin. Charlotte didn't know what this was, and whispered, "Aren't you going to punish her?" Juno smiled and said, "Are you going to punish Gareth?" Charlotte said flatly, "He returned the fang of the sea serpent Vasuji, and he has made great contributions. I have no reason to punish him." Juno said lightly, "How do you know that Drusilla didn't bring me any surprises?" Charlotte smiled, thinking that this old man was really stubborn. He decided not to continue this topic, and said to Juno, "Teacher, let's go to visit the Holy Light Kingdom. This ship should have many secrets." Juno nodded, and was about to grab Charlotte and take him with him, but the two turned their heads together, because they saw at the same time that there was a towering palace on the sea. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 473, The Largest Ghost Fleet in History. Charlotte couldn't help but say, "Is this the second maze?" Before he finished speaking, he saw countless sails emerging from the sea ahead. Ships emerged from the bottom of the sea one after another, and soon the sea was densely populated with countless ships. These ships had different styles and even different ages. Many ships may have spanned hundreds of years and carried a sense of vicissitudes that did not belong to this world. Golden Goat Rolf couldn't help but shout, "I saw the Mins. Did it disappear while crossing the Aegean Sea a few years ago? I also saw the Sirius. It's a ship that's hundreds of years old. It's said that it was loaded with spices worth tens of thousands of gold ecu. It also disappeared in the Aegean Sea and is the most popular treasure ship." Andreas couldn't help but say, "I recognized two Black Phoenix ships. They were said to have encountered a storm at sea. How could they be here?" Charlotte couldn't help but gasp when she heard her men talking about it, and said, "These are ghost ships, all of them are ghost ships." "But, how can there be so many ghost ships? Are all the ships that sank in the Aegean Sea here?" "There are already more than hundreds of ghost ships floating on the sea, but ships are still emerging from the sea." Charlotte shouted, "Prepare for battle." There are often legends of ghost ships on the sea, but generally speaking, ghost ships can't do anything to magic alchemy warships, but ordinary ships will be in trouble when they encounter them. Charlotte's fleet, apart from legendary warships, was a magical alchemy warship. They were not afraid of ordinary ghost ships at all, but now, there were too many ghost ships. Charlotte was no longer sure. His battle order was passed down, and the saints who had just boarded the Holy Light God Kingdom rushed back to the magical alchemy warships they commanded. Charlotte said embarrassedly, "Teacher, I can only ask you to take charge of the Holy Light God Kingdom." Juno Arthur was the strongest person in Baron. He came to control the Holy Light God Kingdom, which might be more than 10 times more powerful than Charlotte's own control. Of course, Charlotte would not let such a powerful force go and defend the Holy Light God Kingdom tightly, resulting in the weakening of the fleet's combat power. Juno smiled slightly and said, "Okay." He took Charlotte and flew into the air. Charlotte was taking this opportunity to look at the surrounding environment, and saw Dulcinea throwing something into the sea, and then a legendary warship similar to the Queen Bee floated on the sea. Charlotte couldn't help but say, "Teacher, your blood servant Dulcinea has made a big thing." Juno shook his head and said, "She has a lot of secrets and doesn't want me to know. I often pretend not to know. When you recruit blood servants in the future, remember to give them some private space, otherwise it's easy to go wrong." Charlotte thought to herself, "I think Gareth has a problem, and it's a big problem. Blood servants shouldn't have such a high subjective initiative, nor should they be so smart." Charlotte looked down at her own fleet and couldn't help but say, "Teacher, has there ever been a fleet in the old world that has 3 legendary warships at the same time?" Juno was silent for a while and said, "Yes." Charlotte was shocked and said, "How could it be possible?" Juno said lightly, "What if that person is called Zimmerman?" At the peak of his power, he had 3 legendary warships. Charlotte didn't want to question it anymore. Some people, if you don't question him, you will feel sorry for your IQ. Some people, if you question him, people will doubt your IQ. Zimmerman is obviously the latter. Charlotte and Juno landed on the Holy Light Kingdom. Charlotte immediately opened some of her authority to her teacher. Juno Arthur first had a layer of clear light, then a layer of green, and finally 2 layers of ocean power. There was also a logbook in front of him. With a blessing of the Holy Light Kingdom, Juno took off into the air. Facing the ghost fleet that was rushing like a pack of wolves, he pointed to the front and shouted loudly, "Everything I point to will be ashes, everything I see will be dust, and everything I see will be annihilated like smoke." Charlotte didn't expect that her teacher would start to use the big move as soon as he came on the field. This is the top spell of the Blood Clan's truth word technique, called the Great Prophecy. The Great Prophecy is not a spell of foreknowledge, but all the words spoken will become true. It is a powerful spell that can change reality. In the thousands of years of history of the Blood Clan, the top strong men of the Arthur family have emerged in an endless stream, but there are only 3 people who have cultivated the Blood Clan's Great Prophecy, and the other 2 are ancient figures from thousands of years ago. Juno Arthur is the only person in the Arthur family who has mastered this technique in hundreds of years. It is also his trump card to become the strongest person in the Blood Clan. If it were only Juno, he would not dare to use the Great Prophecy in the face of the ghost ships that may have exceeded 1,000. If the prophecy fails and fails to change the reality, the backlash of this top Blood Clan spell is also extremely severe. At this time, he has the blessing of the world's #1 legendary warship. There are at least 5 divine creatures on this legendary warship. Although they may have some problems, Juno Arthur is naturally not stingy to use it. He has the power that he has never dared to try before. The magnificent Blood Clan prophecy was issued, and the more than 10 ghost ships at the front of the ghost fleet were the first to bear the brunt and immediately fell apart. The ghost crew members on the ship screamed sharply, but they could not stop the end of extinction. With a buffer of the more than 10 ghost ships in front, the ghost ships behind were slightly better and could resist a little, but they also disintegrated with a bang, and countless ghost crew members fell into the sea, like a group of floating specimens. Charlotte did not expect that Juno Arthur's move would shock everyone. 70 or 80 ghost ships were destroyed by this great prophecy, and it was not until the last remaining power Haida warship that was obviously different from others that it was resisted by this warship. The warship shook slightly, and the hull remained motionless, even protecting the ghost ship behind it. Charlotte's eyes tightened slightly, and she said, "Legendary warship." Juno Arthur smiled slightly and said, "No, it's just an ordinary ancient magic warship." Before the rise of classical alchemy and the more ancient magic creation technique were popular in the old world. There were no magic alchemy warships in that era, only magic warships. Most of the 12 legendary warships are ancient magic warships, but it does not mean that ancient magic warships must be legendary warships. Just like the Fontainebleau and the Damabase are both magic alchemy warships, but they are legendary warships, and many magic alchemy warships are not legendary warships. Charlotte soon realized that this ghost ship that could withstand Juno Arthur's attack, although it withstood the great prophecy of the strongest man in Baron, seemed to be still intact, but a very small number of the ghost crew on the ship were killed. In terms of defense, it is not as good as a legendary battleship, and it is indeed just an ordinary magic battleship. Charlotte said with some regret, although it is not a legendary battleship, it is still a pity to destroy it. It would be better if it could be captured. Juno smiled, but then sent out the second earth-shaking Blood Clan Great Prophecy. This time he bypassed the ghost ship transformed from the ancient magic battleship and still destroyed 70 or 80 ghost ships with one strike. Although the number of this ghost fleet is too large, if Juno bombards it so fiercely, I am afraid that after another 7 or 8 strikes, only the most powerful ones will be able to float on the sea. The warships on Charlotte's side also accelerated and rushed towards the ghost fleet. The magic alchemical cannons began to roar. Although the ghost ships looked weird, their defense was not high, and several of them were sunk immediately. Although they also fought back, relying on their large numbers and heavy artillery fire, the battle scene looked somewhat equally matched. Charlotte was about to ask Juno to cast a few more vampire prophecies, when she heard a loud roar in the distance. The palace floating on the sea suddenly started to move slowly. Charlotte rubbed his eyes and couldn't believe what he saw. He shouted wildly, "What's going on? Why is the maze moving? Is there any justice in this world?" The saints on Charlotte's side also saw the slowly moving sea palace. They all knew that even with magic alchemical warships, it was impossible to shake this sea fortress. The mobile fortress gave up the front route to avoid being hit head-on by the palace floating island. Even the Swan Lake, operated by Drusinia, bypassed the front battlefield. On the contrary, the Dalmabatas, because of its huge size and not being a legendary warship known for its speed, also bypassed it, but it looked a bit dangerous. Charlotte immediately issued an order, asking the Golden Gothralf to take over Vigo and let Vigo operate the Golden Gothralf's magic alchemy warship. Now he needs to maximize his combat effectiveness. The Golden Gothralf's naval battle experience and ability to operate legendary warships naturally far exceed the Flame Paladin Vigo. After the Old Goat and Vigo exchanged their ships, the Dalmabatas's route deviated slightly, and no longer dodged deliberately, but with the help of a ghost ship that was obviously in formation, it separated from the moving maze. Unless the opponent wanted to smash all of his nearly 100 ghost ships, he would be temporarily safe. The Old Goat's operation was skillful and experienced, which made Charlotte slightly relieved. He said to Juno Arthur, "What should we do next?" "What is that moving maze?" Juno Arthur said. "How should I know? I'm not a great navigator. Usually, I fight alone, and at most I just play some tricks. Let's clear out the miscellaneous soldiers first, and then formulate a strategy. A grand naval battle has begun." Chapter 474, The Second Labyrinth, Ishmaelin Palace. Charlotte stood in the captain's room of the Holy Light Kingdom, with countless thoughts roaring in his mind. He temporarily ignored these roars, looking at the endless ghost fleet on the sea and the slowly rising palace on the sea, and felt something was wrong in his heart. If we challenge the evil god, it's always this level. How could anyone pass it? That's right, I don't think anyone has passed it. After all, this is a challenge to the evil god, not a game to pass. No matter how difficult the game is, the designer will always leave the possibility of passing it. Why do there seem to be more ghost ships? Have so many ghost ships sunk in the Agar Sea? Charlotte was thinking, and a thought came out of the diary in her arms. Charlotte Mecklen will start to challenge the second maze, Ishmaelin Palace. He is a part of the body of the fallen evil god Ishmael, which was captured by Agmaris and turned into the second maze controlled by him. Charlotte had never heard of this evil god. In order to remove the evil god's buff on himself, he studied countless materials, but he had not seen any traces of this evil god in any of the materials. From the pomp of the ghost fleet, he guessed that the power of this evil god was related to the realm of death. Well, the evil god of the realm of death died. What kind of evil god joke is this? The battle on the sea lasted for several hours. Although Charlotte's side had 3 legendary warships and 7 magic alchemy warships, and had sunk hundreds of ghost ships, the sea was still densely packed with ghost ships everywhere, and even now ghost ships continued to emerge from the sea. Charlotte didn't know how to win this naval battle if he continued to fight. Although the Ishmaelin Palace could move slowly, he also wanted to join the battle, but apart from causing a little panic at the beginning, the saints under Charlotte's command, relying on the speed of the magic alchemy warships, avoided this floating palace that looked very scary, but did not cause any damage. The Golden Gothrolf had rich experience and kept reminding all the warships to keep a certain distance. The other saints also sensed it. Along with a huge ghost fleet, the sea area nearby also had the nature of a maze. Once it was too far away from other ships, it would be obscured. Fortunately, there were saints on each magic alchemy warship. Whenever this happened, a saint would take action to break the power of the maze and always keep the fleet intact. Charlotte calculated the ammunition reserves and decisively issued an order to retreat. Although the magic alchemy warship was powerful, it still had to rely on the magic alchemy cannon on the ship to fight. Each shell was extremely expensive and could not continue to be consumed on the ghost ships that seemed to have no end. After Charlotte gave the order, Juno took action continuously and used the Blood Clan's great prophecy to clear a channel, allowing the fleet to maintain a complete formation and withdraw from the battle in an orderly manner. Although the ghost fleet chased several times and even tried to use the power of the maze to reverse the direction of space and trap the fleet was too powerful. Saints kept taking action to break the power of the maze and soon broke away from the ghost fleet. Charlotte asked all the ships to form a formation and said to Juno, "Teacher, let's use the Holy Light Kingdom to break through alone." Juno smiled and said, "Okay, there were too many ghost fleets. Even if the magic alchemy warship could sink a few ships, it would not achieve a decisive result at all. It would just waste shells in vain." Although the saints could also take action, the attack power of the saints would increase several times under the amplification of the magic alchemy warship, but the saints were not perpetual motion machines and would get tired. Charlotte was reluctant to waste this fleet in the battle with the ghost fleet. But the Holy Light Kingdom was different. This legendary warship was evil enough and was not afraid of ghost ships at all. All the magic alchemy warships left by Charlotte, including the Damabase and Swan Lake, drove the Holy Light Kingdom to break into the ghost fleet again. This time, Juno did not take action, because he knew Charlotte had other plans. Soon, two ghost ships approached the Holy Light Kingdom from left to right. The hulls of the legendary warship suddenly cracked on both sides, opening a large mouth composed of countless branches, broken wood, and ship's side, biting the two ghost ships tightly and chewing them. Even Charlotte did not expect this change, and Juno could not help but say, compared to the labyrinth evil god, this Holy Light Kingdom is more evil. Charlotte tried to communicate with Amun, and soon the words appeared in the Holy Light Kingdom logbook. "Father, Dapo Colado was hungry just now. Do you need me to stop her? But my strength is not enough. I need my mother's help, but he is a little out of control now." Charlotte communicated, "Don't worry about the ancient Maduro tree for now." Why did Amabella lose control? Handwriting on the Saint Light Kingdom's logbook, "I don't know either. I'm very worried about my mother. She seems pregnant again." Charlotte was shocked. He knew a little about Amabella. It was not normal for this divine creature to be pregnant. Although Amun behaved very normally, he was definitely not a real life. From existence to structure, there was no rationality at all. Charlotte pondered for a long time and asked, "Teacher Juno, what should we do if Amabella is pregnant?" Juno was surprised and said, "I noticed it last time. She seems to have a new mutation, but she is pregnant." Charlotte hurriedly said, "It's definitely not me." Juno was silent for a while and whispered, "I'm afraid it was you who did it." Charlotte was shocked and said, "Teacher, my size doesn't match that of this divine creature." Juno sighed and said, "But you are the one who has the most contact with her. Amabella is not an ordinary woman. She gives birth to new life and does not need the procedures of humans." "Well, don't say you can't understand it. I can't understand it either. In short, this child can't be kept." Charlotte was about to cry, and he didn't want it either. The question is, can he have the final say in this matter? At this time, another 5 or 6 ghost ships crashed into the ship. The hull of the Holy Light God Kingdom cracked, and 5 or 6 strange giant mouths appeared. Countless roots and branches stretched out from the giant mouths, swallowing all the ghost ships. Resto, Asperis, Rolf, Chiudelu, Ogon, Gareth Mekran, Andreas Constantine, Vigo, Drusinia and others watched the Holy Light God Kingdom enter the ghost fleet. Countless fogs appeared immediately. After a moment, the fog disappeared, and everything disappeared, including the Holy Light God Kingdom, the ghost fleet, and the slowly moving Ishmaran Palace. Chapter 475 Let's Fight. As the Holy Light Kingdom was killing people everywhere on the sea, Charlotte found that there were more great limo on the ship. These blue giants had never appeared in this world not long ago, but now they greeted him very familiarly, and even took it for granted that Charlotte should be familiar with them. The batch of illustrations Charlotte sent was obviously not enough. He even saw 7 or 8 men who looked very similar, but with slightly different heights and fatness. Well, the illustrations he prepared for the novel were mainly female portraits, and there were not many male illustrations. So female great limo have not appeared for the time being. It must be said that under Charlotte's guidance, the painters of Fars made up for the backwardness of skills and drew very beautiful characters. As long as the female great limo can transform into human, almost all of them are top-level 2-dimensional beauties. Except for the strange proportions of their facial features and their bodies that are not in line with the laws of nature, everything is abnormally perfect. Charlotte is now very curious, how many ghost ships can the Holy Light Kingdom swallow? But he was also a little distressed, because the number of big limo on the ship increased a little too fast. Although the Holy Light Kingdom was huge, its sailing speed was almost as fast as the Queen Bee. Under Charlotte's control, he deliberately controlled the swallowing speed of the Holy Light Kingdom, and always kept a perfect distance from the ghost fleet. As long as Charlotte liberated the Holy Light Kingdom, there were always countless thoughts in his mind, and he always ignored them. Just as he was maneuvering the Holy Light Kingdom to avoid a fleet of more than 20 ghost ships, suddenly a cold voice suppressed all thoughts, "Charlotte Mecklen." As the voice vibrated, everything in front of Charlotte disappeared, and he appeared in another world. This was definitely not a dreamland, but another kind of space that could not be described in words. He was standing on a platform, which was part of a palace. The platform was not empty. A graceful woman was looking at him with an angry face. The woman looked like Amabella. She was holding a little boy in her hand. The boy's eyes were clear as water and full of innocence. On the other side, there were 3 women standing. Of course, it is not accurate to say that they were standing, because one of the women had a human body and a snake tail. She looked lazy and calm, and was stunningly beautiful, but she was coiled on the ground. Another woman was tall and had a flower crown made of branches and leaves on her hair, just like the elf queen in classical mythology, but there was endless pain in her eyes. The last woman was slightly fat, plump and juicy, and was eating secretly. Charlotte took a look and didn't dare to look anymore, because she was eating the crew of the ghost ship. Well, very evil. This palace released colorful light and was entangled with another strange palace surrounded by black air. The 2 palaces floated in the endless void, surrounded by darkness. The woman holding the little boy said loudly, "Charlotte Mecklen, are you still a man? The women in your family are fighting, but you do nothing and still have the mood to flirt with the maids at home." There are too many flaws in this sentence, and Charlotte didn't know how to refute it for a while. And he didn't know if these divine creatures would turn against him and eat him alive if he refuted it. Even if you use your toes to think, you can guess the identities of these people. The woman with the little boy must be Amabella, and the little boy must be Amun. The one with a human body and a snake tail is the sea snake Visuji, the tall one with a flower crown on his head is Gumatarasuda Vacalato, and the slightly fat one who ate the crew of the ghost ship can only be the king of the giant whale. What kind of evil scene is this? Amabella pointed to the palace outside, which was entangled with the Holy Light God Kingdom, and said, "You should fight like a man and protect us, and you should hide behind us." Well, this is too evil. Charlotte couldn't help but said, "I'm going to fight? Isn't that sending myself to die?" Amabella yelled, "Coward who is afraid of death, why did I find such a man?" Charlotte thought to herself, "Sister Evil God, you are too immersed in the play." He remembered that Amun said that Amabella was pregnant, and he took a special look at the belly of this divine creature. Well, maybe the time is still short, the belly is still flat, and there is no sign. Amabella was furious and shouted, "You are not timid and dare not fight, that's fine, but you are actually thinking about that kind of thing." Charlotte couldn't help but shouted, "Damn it. I'm going to fight now. Let me out first." As soon as he said this, his body floated up and flew out of the palace. Charlotte's soul was about to fly away, and he shouted, "Teacher Juno, save me." However, there was no response, and he didn't know if Juno was cut off from perception and hadn't noticed his situation at all. In front of Charlotte, a large sea ship appeared, breaking through the void and heading towards him. He stretched out his hand and pulled out a chain from his arm. He shook it casually and it turned into Night's lance burning with flames and black smoke. This is the second transformation of the blood spirit, which has the power left by the fire evil god Enulu. Charlotte's bloody glory flowed, and he made several attempts, and finally turned into the blood flame of Adonis. Other powers were not compatible with the power of the fire evil god Enulu. He crashed into the oncoming ghost ship. Although this ghost ship was majestic, the hull was not strong enough to withstand a blow from a holy level extraordinary weapon. Charlotte blasted the hull of the ghost ship with a shot, and rushed all the way. No matter what he encountered, he shattered it with a shot. When he killed from the bow to the stern, he heard a loud bang, and the ghost ship shattered, and the black smoke it turned into was calmly swallowed by the Holy Light Kingdom. Before Charlotte could look back, 3 more ghost ships appeared around him. He fired a spear, but this time a rapier blocked his attack. A man covered in black smoke jumped off the ghost ship, performed an imperial salute gracefully, and then attacked with a sword. The two sides exchanged 7 or 8 moves, and Charlotte was shocked to find that this ghost crew member was actually a saint. However, he was dead, no longer as wise as he was before, and his strength was far less than before. He was in a state of decline, but Charlotte was not at a disadvantage for a while. The two sides exchanged more than 10 moves, and a pure white feather flew over and pierced the man's chest. Charlotte quickly shot again, turning the ghost crew member of the saint into a ball of black smoke. He glanced and saw that the black smoke was also swallowed by the Holy Light Kingdom, and jumped onto the second ghost ship. Although Charlotte didn't know why he appeared here, since he had to fight, he would fight. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.